All right. Good evening. The Raritan Township Planning Board is now in session. Call to order. The notice requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act have been satisfied by the placing of a notice of this meeting on the bulletin board in the municipal building, filing the notice with the township clerk, and transmitting the notice to the Hunterdon County Democrat, the Courier News, the Star Ledger, and Trenton Times. Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Chairman, Mr. Edward Gettings.
Here.
Vice Chair, Ms. Donna Drews. Here. Ms. Robin Fatu. Here. Mr. Scott McDade.
Here.
Ms. Michelle Cavacuri. Here. Mr. Dennis Concanon.
Here.
Mr. James Miller. Mr. Glenn Sokolowski.
Here.
Board Professionals, Board Attorney, Mr. John Bellardo.
Here.
Township Planner, Mr. Jeffrey Vacarella.
Here.
Township Engineer, Mr. Rakesh Darji.
Present.
Township Landscape Architect, Mr. John Morgan Thomas.
Here.
Board Traffic Consultant, Mr. Jay Troutman.
Here.
And Board Planner, Ms. Jessica Caldwell.
Very good. Thank you. I'd like to ask everybody to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence for the men and women in the armed services.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Welcome to everyone. Tonight, we've got a few agenda items up front. Let me walk through those. In terms of reports, I do not have any reports tonight. Any board comments this evening before we get going? No, there being none. Engineer comments?
Nothing.
Nothing, Rakesh? Okay, thank you. Planners comments? Okay, thanks, Jessica. Attorney's comments?
No, thank you.
Okay. There is no correspondence this evening. We do have minutes from our closed session on March 27th, and those were all forwarded to us in advance. We do have to agree to those, but does anyone have any comments or suggestions or changes to those minutes? I do not. That being the case, can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Chairman, Mr. Edward Gettings.
Yes.
Ms. Robin Fatu.
Yes.
Mr. Scott McDade.
Yes.
Mr. Dennis Concanon.
Yes.
Ms. Michelle Cavacuri.
Yes.
Mr. James Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Glenn Sokolowski.
Yes. Okay, very good. We do have a resolution to approve this evening. That's resolution 07-2024. This is the Flemington Industrial Park LLC that we met with several weeks ago. We received the resolution in advance of the meeting for review. Are there any comments or suggested changes to the resolution? I do not have any. So have a motion to approve, please.
Motion.
Second.
Chairman, Mr. Edward Gettings.
Yes.
Ms. Robin Fatu.
Yes.
Mr. Scott McDade.
Yes.
Mr. Dennis Concanon.
Yes.
Ms. Michelle Cavacuri.
Yes.
Mr. James Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Glenn Sokolowski.
Okay, thank you. Our next agenda item is citizens' privilege, and this is an opportunity for anyone who is here this evening or anybody who is live streaming to address the board on anything that is not further down on the agenda. So if you have comments or suggestions on Woodmont, that is coming up next. But if you have anything you want to address to the board that is not related to Woodmont, now would be the time to do so. You can come up to the microphone or speak up online. Okay, there being none, we will move on to tonight's public hearing, which is Woodmont Raritan Bronze LLC. I'd like to just in terms of the order of events here, I'm sure a lot of you have not been to planning board meetings before. So let me give you a little indication of how the process will flow tonight. The board is obviously up here at the dais. These are all board members except Mr. Bellardo, who is to my left, who is the planning board attorney, and Ms. Vaughn, who is the planning board secretary, down to my far right. The Raritan Township professionals, and by professionals we mean engineer, planner, landscape architect, etc. They are seated at this table to my left. And the folks from Woodmont will also have their own experts that are going to be providing testimony. We have received information on their plans and proposal in advance. Those have been reviewed, but tonight is the presentation. Tonight is the chance to ask questions. So as the different experts are introduced, they will go through and they will testify. They will all be sworn in by Mr. Bellardo. Our experts have already been sworn in at the beginning of the year. So they will all be sworn in, and then their attorney will walk through a process, not testifying, asking them to testify to any number of questions that we may have, suggestions that the experts came up with, the application itself. So we will go through that process. So you'll hear the board asking questions. You'll hear the experts asking questions. When we conclude that for each expert, I will then throw it out to you, both here in the room first, and when we're done with your questions here, we'll go to anybody who's live streaming. So if you have a question at that point, that's the time to come up, but you can only ask questions regarding the testimony that you just heard. Okay, so if the engineer has provided testimony, you hear him say something or her say something, and you can ask that question, come on up to the microphone, give your name, give your address, and do so. We'll do that in an orderly fashion. At the end of the evening, when all of the testimony is complete, you will have an opportunity, if you have further things to say, that's when you'll be invited up to say it. Mr. Bellardo will swear you in at that point, because at that point, you're providing testimony. You're not giving, not just asking questions. Okay? So again, when we get there, I'll deal with anyone who wants to address questions here in the room first. Then we'll go to the live streaming. I think at last count, we had what, 10 or 15, you think?
Yeah, I'd say about
Okay,
that.
so we want to make sure that we're inclusive and give everybody an opportunity to participate. And with that,
I want to add one thing. A planning board, this is a planning board, is created pursuant to the New Jersey Municipal Land Use Law. This planning board is not a legislative body. We don't pass ordinances, zoning or otherwise. Those ordinances are passed by the township committee. So our role when an application is submitted is to review the application and determine whether it complies with the parameters of the ordinance. So we're not the folks that decide where certain things go and in what zones they go in. That was a governing body back in 2019 with respect to this particular application. So I just want to make that distinction clear as to what our role is vis-a-vis the township committee. And with that, Mr. Chairman.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bellardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was a very good overview. I hope everybody can hear me back there. I apologize for my back. But good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board professionals, and the public. My name is John Inglesino. I'm a partner at the law firm of Inglesino Taylor, and we are representing the applicant Woodmont Raritan Bronze LLC, an affiliate of Woodmont Properties. Woodmont is seeking preliminary and major site plan approval regarding property designated as Lot 4 in Block 40, also known as 40 Highway Route 202, and a portion of Lot 5.01 in Block 40, also known as 75 Voorhees Corner, here in the township of Raritan. The property is located in the UBR US Bronze Redevelopment District. The applicant owns the property, which is the subject of this application. The project consists of the removal of existing pavement, removal of other improvements on the site. The applicant is proposing a warehouse facility totaling approximately 353,803 total square feet. The warehouse will be approximately 45.5 feet high, just a little bit higher, with 36 loading doors, 23 knockout loading doors for use for future tenants if required. Driveway and parking area improvements are also proposed, including 65 storage spaces on site, and the applicant is also proposing additional site improvements, including detention basins, signage, screening, landscaping, and the like. The applicant is certainly mindful of the public interest in this application, particularly the issue of truck traffic relative to Case Boulevard and Voorhees Corner Road. You'll hear testimony from two of our witnesses regarding that issue of concern. We understand and respect the process, but we also assert that respectfully, that this is an as-of-right application, meaning that we're not seeking any variances, we're not seeking any relief in that regard from the redevelopment plan. I do want to point out to the board, as the board knows, and to the public, that we're here this evening after a very lengthy process of numerous public hearings, public actions taken both by the governing body and this board relative to the redevelopment process. The redevelopment process, which many in the public participated in, commenced back on March 19th of 2019, when the Township Committee authorized and directed this board to conduct a preliminary investigation to determine whether Lot 4 qualified as an area in need of redevelopment. On May 29th of 2019, the redevelopment study was presented to the board by the board's planner, Ms. Caldwell, and the board voted unanimously to recommend designating Lot 4 as an area in need of redevelopment. On June 5 of 2019, the Township Committee adopted Resolution 19136, actually designating Lot 4 as an area in need of redevelopment. On July 10th of 2019, the board reviewed the subject redevelopment plan and determined its consistency or not inconsistent with the township's master plan. And on August 20th of 2019, the Township Committee introduced the subject redevelopment plan ordinance, and that ordinance went through the usual process. And on September 3rd of 2019, with a public hearing, the committee adopted the subject redevelopment plan, which was ordinance 1923. On June 8th of 2022, the Township Committee passed Resolution 22147, authorizing the planning board to undertake an investigation of Lot 5.01. And October 21 of 2022, the planning board held that public hearing, considered the recommendation of Ms. Caldwell, and voted to recommend declaring Lot 5.1 to be an area in need of redevelopment. On December 6th of 2022, the Township Committee declared Lot 5.01 in Block 40 as an area in need. On February 7th of 2023, the Township Committee introduced an amendment to the U.S. Bronze redevelopment plan to include both lots 4 and 5.01. And on March 21 of 2023, the Township Committee adopted that ordinance, thus creating the zoning for this project. On November 21 of 2023, I say that as if it was so long ago, which was a few months ago, actually. The Township Committee entered into a redevelopment agreement with the applicant. A representative of the applicant, Stephen Santola, will outline some of the salient points and terms of that redevelopment agreement so that the board and the public understand the applicant's obligations under it. I have to pass out as Exhibit A1 the various documents that I just referenced so that it's clear that the foregoing redevelopment documents are part of the record. And if that's okay, Mr. Blardo, I'll give those to the board secretary.
That's fine, Mr. Indicino.
You can distribute those to the board. Want the board to have them handy. Try to give you more books to carry home from school, so to speak, but just thought it might be handy for you all to have a compilation. What's that? I have one for me. There may be more in there than you need, but figured it was better to have too many than too few.
Thank you.
Yeah. So while you're looking at those, Mr. Chairman, I guess the point here is that the project has been through a very lengthy public process in which the Township Committee, the board have taken numerous public actions at public hearings to get this project to this point. The project has been thoroughly negotiated for the mutual benefit of both the township and the redeveloper, which is exactly what the redevelopment process is all about and how it's supposed to work. In addition, the applicant has already received various outside agency permits and approvals required for the project, some of which are relevant to some of the review comments we received from the board professionals. Such outside agency permits and approvals already received consist of the following, and I want to list what they are, and I'm going to pass those out all as well. We have approval from the Hunterdon County Planning Board by letter dated April 24 of 2024. We have approval of the Hunterdon County Soil Conservation District by letter dated May 2nd of 2024. We have flood hazard area verification, flood hazard individual permit, freshwater wetlands general permit number 2, and water quality permit certificate, all issued by permit by the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection and dated and approved on October 26th of 2023. So we have all those DEP permits in place. We have a letter from JMT of April 12, 2024, confirming adequacy of sewer gallonage. And just today, we received the stormwater discharge permit from the DEP. So we have, most of, if not all, of our outside agency permits and approvals in place. And I'd like to pass out a copy of all those permits that I just referenced to the board.
Is that
as Exhibit
A2? Going to be A2?
Yes.
Okay.
What's that? Oh. All right, so while those are being passed out, if I may, just to not waste any time, I think as Mr. Bellardo said accurately, that the applicant's primary responsibility in this hearing is to demonstrate that the site plan complies with the redevelopment, right? That's where all the planning went in. That's where all the effort went in, and that's a very important document. And so we now have to come with a site plan that is compliant with the redevelopment plan. And the board's role, of course, is to ensure that the applicant, in fact, does that. We've received a number of comment letters from the board's professionals. And again, just to make sure that the record is complete, just want to list those real quickly. We have J. Caldwell and Associates Review Letter, report number 1, dated April 8th of 2024. We have Environmental Resolutions, Inc. Review Letter dated May 2nd, 2024. We have McDonough and Ray Associates Review Letter dated May 6th, 2024. We have Township of Raritan Review Letter authored by Jeffrey Bassarella dated May 3, 2024. Jeff, did I pronounce your name correctly? Baccarelli? Baccarelli. You know, that's what I thought it was, and I thought I heard something different. I apologize.
You're Italian, you should.
I should know better. I know, with a name like Inglesino, I should know better. We have the Township of Raritan Environmental Commission Review Report. We have the Fire Marshal Review Letter dated April 9, 2024. We have the Raritan Recycling Coordinator Memorandum dated April 10, 2024. We have the Historians Committee comments dated April 2nd, 2024. And we have John Morgan Thomas Landscape Architects Report dated May 7th of 2024. And Mr. Chairman, I want to let you know that we do appreciate advanced receipt of these foregoing reports. And so in an effort to be efficient, I want you to know that the applicant's witnesses will endeavor to include issues raised in those reports into their affirmative testimony. Each of our witnesses will, of course, be available to the board professionals, and the public to answer questions based on their testimony, as you indicated. I have 4 witnesses this evening, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Santola, who I referenced earlier, who is Executive Vice President and General Counsel of Woodmont Properties. We have Bill Lane of Menlo Engineering, who is the project civil engineer. Phil Ruggieri of Ruggieri and Ruggieri, who is the project architect, and Carl Pankey of Langen Engineering, who is our traffic expert. So without further ado,
All
I'd
of
like-
those four gentlemen would stand up and raise their right hand. You gentlemen, with respect to your testimony tonight, swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. You are all sworn, and as our chairman indicated previously, our professionals were previously sworn and remain under oath for the balance of the year.
Mr. Santola is just passing out, I guess, which will be Exhibit A3, which he'll describe momentarily. So, Mr. Santola, you're not here as an expert, but I think it would be appropriate for you to describe the board, sort of what you, who employs you, what you do for a living, and what your role is here this evening.
Sure. Good evening, Mr. Chairman of the board. My name is Stephen Santola, Santola. My business address is 100 Passaic Avenue in Fairfield, New Jersey. I am the Executive Vice President and General Counsel of Woodmont Properties, and I've held that role for 20 years next month. So let me just give you a little bit of a history of the first page of your book, if you'll open. And
Well, the book is entitled what?
the book is entitled.
May I just ask if you just have a seat so that you're right in front of the microphone for those
Sure.
online?
The book's entitled 408 US Route 202 Raritan Township, Woodmont Raritan redevelopment.
And we're going to mark that as A3, correct?
Yes.
So Woodmont was created in 1963. We're a little over 60 years old. We're a New Jersey-centric company. We do have holdings, both multifamily and industrial, up and down the East Coast. Our industrial and warehouse operations are centered here in New Jersey, in the Lehigh Valley, and in Florida. Like most builders of our size and age, we started out as a tract home builder and commercial flex building builder back in the 60s. And over time, we grew and grew and grew. Back in about 2000, we got into the multifamily business, doing a lot of downtown redevelopments. And in 2010, we created Woodmont Industrial, and we've been going at that ever since. So we have two basic divisions within the company. We employ about 160 people, mostly in New Jersey, but some in Pennsylvania and a few in Florida. I have in front of you just a smattering of some similar projects that we've done recently. You can see Allentown, Jupiter, Florida, Hope Lawn, New Brunswick, Rahway, and South Amboy and South Brunswick. Different projects that are now complete and enjoying some success. So I'll jump right into what we're working on here this evening. So let's all just remember Lot 4 is the big lot where the bronze.
Excuse me, Mr. Santola. I see it over there. Are you going to post the chart that we have here so that the people in the room can see it? Or you're going through it? You are.
I was
Okay.
just waiting
Oh,
for
yeah.
him as he's going.
Good. So all the images that are in your book, I apologize, I should have said that in the beginning, you'll be, experts will be relying on them later.
Okay.
I'm just getting everybody comfortable
Great.
with where we are and what we're accomplishing. So you can flip to the next image. So Lot 4 is the old Raritan Bronze site proper. It was a manufacturing facility containing 4 main structures, 2 manufacturing buildings, a foundry, and a warehouse. The site included several smaller structures, including 2 chemical storage sheds and 2 supply well pumps, all roughly totaling around 130,000 square feet, including the out parcels, the outbuildings. The main plant was constructed in 1957, and the operation was there until the time it closed in 2009. Office operations did continue after 2009. USB manufactured a wide range of non-ferrous metallic powders and metallic pigments for the use in a variety of industries, including inks and coatings and the like. The redevelopment plan that was discussed earlier from its inception always included warehouse distribution as part of the Lot 4 permitted uses. Lot 501, which is the small lot you can see just to the rear, it's easier to see in the book, but that's the lot that fronts on Voorhees Corner Road, was zoned similarly. So in essence, could have been developed as a warehouse or a truck terminal or a hotel or some other uses that were permitted within the zone. we were looking at acquiring lot 501 for development. The town council said to us, we have a better idea. How about if you keep the trees on lot 501, make it a buffer, and don't develop it at all? And we analyzed that and we decided, okay, we can do that. So we set about not including development on that site. So then we said to the town council, well, how about if we were able to use a driveway out onto Voorhees Corner Road? And the town said, how about no? So we took the driveway off of Voorhees Corner Road, and all you'll see, and I have an image of it for you in a few minutes, is an access drive that's actually grass pavers. So there'll be no mistake of somebody accidentally driving in it or upward. It's really, you can't tell. Only your first responders will know that that's the emergency access path, if in fact access off of 202 was denied. So why I mentioned we were looking at acquiring lot 501, which is the small lot in the back. We were also looking at acquiring lot 5, which is adjacent to us, just north on 202, who was the same owner as lot 501. We approached the municipality about development of that site, and we ultimately landed on donating 55 acres of that property to the municipality. So with the image you have in front of you, the cross hatching on the property next to us around the school is the 55 acres. You can see down along Voorhees Corner Road is the preservation easement. So there will be no development ever on lot 5.01 going forward. And then there's the PSE&G right of way that runs down all of it. So you can see, I think very cleverly, the council created a buffer around the school and a buffer around the church where no development will ever occur in the future because you'll own it. So that's what we agreed to. And that, by the way, is detailed heavily in the redevelopment agreement, which was obviously heavily negotiated document. With regard to the 55 acres, we have a subdivision plan ready to be filed. So we hope to be back sometime over the summer, maybe late in the summer, to get the lot divided into the 55 acres we'll be donating to the town and the front piece up along 202 that we'll be retaining for ourselves. So those wheels are in motion. Looking at the site plan, if you turn the page, please. As I mentioned before, the council was resolute in their position that no truck traffic, no car traffic would exit onto Case Boulevard or Voorhees Corner Road. So you can see the access drive comes directly off of Route 202. We slid the existing driveway a little bit to the north in order to make the right turn in a little easier. And we are also widening 202 in that section just to also make that movement a little simpler. You can see there's also a fairly long access drive that comes into the truck court, just in case we don't ever anticipate of a building this size having more than one truck showing up at once. But if they do, there's room to queue without getting out onto 202. And that would also benefit the road widening on 202, would allow a truck, if it were to need to be on the shoulder and not in the right-hand lane. So as the redevelopment agreement specifies, there will be no truck traffic on Voorhees Corner Road or Case Boulevard. We will concede right up front that any lease that we execute will include instructions that no truckers are to take those roads. Further, I think frankly, because you can't access the site from either Case or Voorhees Corner, there's not really a time savings to circumvent the site and come all the way back around when you can simply go to the circle and turn around to come back up on 202 North, which is the anticipated direction that we expect the trucks to take. And we'll have more testimony on that with our traffic engineers. Trailer parking. So we had originally envisioned more trailer parking, which you see along the very bottom of the site plan. The council wanted us to move that further away from Voorhees Corner Road, so we lowered the number of those. I want to make it very clear that those trailer spaces are not designed to add storage space to the warehouse facility. They're just for ease of operations so that if there's need for an empty trailer, we don't have to, the tenant doesn't have to wait to pull for an empty trailer to arrive. There's one right on campus, if you will. The truck traffic as it comes in will stay to the left. There'll be no trucks will be able to make that right as you come in the entrance drive. Those are cars only, and you can see that's the car parking lot on the western side of the building. So the trucks won't even circumnavigate the building. They'll only be on the eastern side facing the PSE&G easement. Again, that was in the redevelopment agreement and directed by the council in an effort to keep the truck area consolidated and minimize any impacts it might have on the residential neighbors. Moving along, also, you'll note the redevelopment plan permitted 60 feet in height. The council came to us and said, gee, that seems awfully tall. Do you really need 60 feet in height? So we have agreed to reduce that to 49 feet. Also, the council said, well, we'd like to create some more sidewalks in the area. So as a designated redeveloper, can you help us with that? And we settled on $150,000 donation to be used for one of two things, either first responder improvements or sidewalk improvements in the area. We will have extensive testimony about stormwater because I know that was a question that came up as well. And I just want to make sure I covered everything. Oh, so just to be clear, this is a state-of-the-art Class A distribution facility. That's really all we build. That's what the market demands. So it will have ESFR sprinklers, LED lighting, clear ceiling heights. It will attract an A tenant. And what does that mean? An A tenant means A jobs, means A rent. So that means A taxes paid to the municipality. So by getting rid of an old manufacturing facility that I don't even know what it appeared for on the tax rolls, you're going to have a Class A facility that doesn't manufacture anything and will be creating jobs in the area, and we return to the tax rolls in a very significant manner. I want to walk you through real quickly, if I can. Our architect's going to do the same, but if we
Can I
just turn
interrupt you
few
for a minute?
pages.
With respect to the trailer storage?
Sure.
Could you just clarify, will any of those trailers along that outside lane there, will they be storing anything in those trailers? Will refrigeration units be running?
There will be no storage in those trailers. A full trailer might pull in while it's waiting for its appropriate spot, but that's really not a storage issue. It's a matter of just running operations. So we don't have the tenant locked down yet. There is a possibility that there could be some of those. They won't be running all the time. In other words, they'll be able to keeping anything cold there stored like overnight. But if it's waiting to get unloaded, theoretically, it could be a refrigerated product.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's funny because the market really loves the trailer storage. And to us, it's much better for any municipality because it avoids any trucks stopping somewhere else or, pulling over on the side of 202. It creates a whole on-site campus where it's totally self-sustained site right there. So there'll be no impact from any of the trucks outside of the area. So if I can just walk you through a couple of these images, if you'll turn the page. This is the front door to the building. On the next page is the opposite view of the same side. This is a shot, and you can look down in the lower right-hand corner. This will become more relevant in a minute. You can see where the image is from. This is an image from the corner of the building closest to Voorhees Corner Road, looking up at the truck court. So if you turn the page one more time, you'll see the page entitled 408 US Route 202, view from Voorhees Corner Road. When we were at the TRC, we were requested to come up with some images of what people may or may not see from different locations. We've expanded on that for what we're going to show you here tonight. So this is the view. The top picture is with the building built from Voorhees Corner Road. The second image is with the building built as you move north on 202 coming up to the building. You'll turn the page. The next image is the main entrance on 202 looking south. You can see the building here as you come down. And then we have the images on the next two pages from Voorhees Corner Road. This first shot is a shot looking in the emergency access drive. And you can see, I'm pretty certain if you read the verbiage from the redevelopment plan, the emergency access drive needs to be heavily buffered and bermed, which you can see that we have done here, helping to protect not only the fact that there is any access from here, but also deflects the building image as you drive down Voorhees Corner Road. And I think the last page is really the interesting too, because the first page you can see 68 Voorhees Corner Road. And if you turn the page to the last page of the book, you're just moving a few addresses down to 7072 Voorhees Corner Road, and you can see the building literally disappearing behind the existing buffer that we're preserving through the acquisition of lot 5.01, which is exactly, I can tell you, what the council intended when they strongly, I'll call it, encouraged us to preserve that property. That is all I have, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to answer any questions the board might have.
Just for the record, the reference to council was to the township committee.
Correct. Yes, I'm sorry.
Mr. Iglesino, are you moving a 1, 2, and 3 into the record?
Yes.
Anyone have any questions?
Any questions?
Just a logistics in relationship to the truck parking
Mhm.
area. Will the, just as far as from an operation, I know you don't know the tenants, but will those trucks be coming in, be directly associated with those business, or are they all independent contractors? And the reason I'm asking is the ability to use the restroom and things like that, because that is an issue in other towns when trucks have to roam around to find a place to park, to
That is-
eat, and
That is a great point. I think we've had a lot of interest in the building, and I know the question is going to come up, is it 1 tenant, 2 tenant, 3 tenants? The building's really designed hopefully for 1 tenant. It may, and it has provisions that it might be split into 2. We don't envision doing any more than that. And right now, from what we're seeing in the market, we feel very comfortable that we'll get a single tenant user. Before I open my mouth, I'm almost positive, Mr. Chair, that we have bathroom facility in the warehouse. So, you know, you'll probably laugh, but when we talk about Class A 2024 distribution facilities, that's kind of new, right? So there's always the office component, has nice clean bathroom. To your excellent point, the truckers aren't necessarily open. So we always have bathrooms in the warehouse that everybody are welcome to use, so that they don't have to go, to your point, to McDonald's and try and park their tractor trailer to be able to use the net.
Recognizing that you don't have a tenant nailed down yet, do you anticipate any type of hazardous material storage?
We don't, preferably as a landlord, that's not our first choice of a tenant. But obviously, any materials that were to be stored there would have to be stored pursuant to law, and I'm sure your office would be involved.
Thank you.
Question, I don't know if we're on operations or if that be later.
No, you can ask me.
Hours of operation, 24.
Well, we don't have a tenant yet. The zone permits 24/7. I can tell you that most users are not operating in the middle of the night, particularly outside the building. There may be skeletal staff inside that are getting ready for the next day. But I don't want to misrepresent anything tonight.
Yeah, and we're not looking for any relief in that regard. So we do envision that it would be a 24/7 operation. I've heard of Mr. Bellardo on that, but there's no redevelopment plan does not restrict the hours of operation.
Yeah, I could represent, and I've consulted with our professionals previously, and I'm obviously knowledgeable of our ordinance, that there is no ordinance that restricts hours of operation in this zone. And that's not something we can, as a board, impose if the governing body decided that that was not going to be included in either the redevelopment agreement or the redevelopment ordinance.
Mr. Santola, you commented that there would be no trucks on Case Boulevard or on Voorhees Corner.
That's correct.
What actions do you take or are you taking so that the trucker doesn't make the turn and find
Well,
themselves on?
There's what we can do, and our traffic expert's going to address that
Okay,
as well.
that's
There's what
fair.
we can do and there's what the municipality can do. But what we can do is lease mandate it, right? So that it becomes a lease issue if it's not followed. And we can also post signs in the truck court that all access to and from the site must be on 202. I'm sure right now, the town council theoretically could prohibit all trucks on Case Boulevard. Just go anything over 4 tons, whatever, can't be on Case Boulevard. It may present a little bit of a problem because you get some deliveries to the high school probably, or to the middle school rather. And then you've got some moving trucks, but those are usually exempt if they're handling local issues. So, that is also a possibility. But again, the site was completely designed around the idea that we don't want, and there would be no trucks on Case or 40s.
Okay, thank you.
And we're open, by the way, to any other suggestions that if the town wanted to prohibit truck traffic on Case Boulevard, we would have no objection.
Just to be clear, they still have to use the jug handle at Case Boulevard to turn around and go the other direction, correct? They come out on 202.
To go 202 north, they're just going to come out. Oh, you mean to go back south? Yes.
Okay, just to be
Yeah.
clear.
Oh, no, that's fair.
And I assume the traffic person will have
Absolutely.
more of that.
Absolutely.
on
No question.
Vice Chair's question. Okay. All right. Thank you. This is your opportunity. If you have any questions for Mr. Santola on the testimony that you just heard, and I'm talking to the people in the room, not the people live streaming just yet. So if you have any questions, please come on up, come to the microphone. Give your name and address, please.
Paula Ellentuck, 16 Ridge Road.
I'm just going to need you to speak louder. As the sign says, speak loud, slow, and just spell your first and last name and provide your address.
Paula Ellentuck, PAULAELLENTUCH, 16 Ridge Road. I have a question on that Voorhees Corner property. You said you're giving it to the township that's not being developed?
I knew that was going to get a little confusing. They can have it if they want it. The piece I don't think they want it. We're going to be restricted. So it's called a conservation easement. So all of the area fronting that we're not using, we are using a little bit of it up the hill, but all of the area fronting on Voorhees Corner Road would be deed restricted from further development. In essence, taking a lot undeveloped.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Karen. Karen Becker, 14 White House Way, Ringoes, Raritan Township. 2 questions. So looking at the drawing on the left-hand side, that's where the trucks are going to be going in and out. Is that correct?
I'm sorry. This left?
Yeah.
No, this is the emergency access. Grass paver that I mentioned. And it's only for first responders in the event that is active. All the truck traffic and all the traffic on the side.
So maybe you're sitting, it just looks
Yeah.
yeah, like for trucks to be going, it just looks narrow. Just wondering if that was actually wide enough for the traffic.
Well, they're gonna present a traffic expert and what the traffic expert does, the engineer, he talks about turning and templates and all of the details that you're interested in. And then Mr. Troutman over here, who's our traffic expert, he makes sure that what their traffic expert is saying is correct. And if he has any questions about the turns and the highway and all of that, he grills them.
Okay.
So that's coming.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I just thought maybe the building didn't have to be that big, so.
And by the way, we also have to make sure that the fire truck, if it's ever needed, that the fire truck has easy access into that facility.
Thank you.
And
from
Mr.
where I was-
Corcoran
I'm
has
sorry.
already reviewed those plans, but there'll be testimony to that.
Okay, and from where I was sitting, I thought it was coming in the other way, so it
Okay.
didn't look wide enough. But I have another question. You said the operations would be 24/7. So my question to you is, what will the nighttime sky look like with everything lit up? And have you also considered doing any solar rather than just plain electricity?
Great, all great questions. So we don't have, we're not, I hope I didn't say an application on any of that, kind of set 24/7. Because we're not 100% sure who's going to be.
But it could be.
It should be, it is
Right.
permitted. If the board would like, we would parking lot, outdoor lights, to a safety level from a regular level, let's say, from 11 until
Well,
5
let's
in the
not
morning.
get into lighting because that's going to be your engineer.
Totally
And,
understand.
and the engineer is going to talk about foot candles, and lighting and all of those things. So then you could, as members of the public, ask the engineer about all of those questions. Mr. Santola is a lawyer, and like me as a lawyer, we think we're experts at everything.
I was just going to
But
say
he's
that.
not, he's not
But
experts
you're
at,
not.
he's not experts at foot candles and lighting.
No,
Oh, gee.
I have a little bit of knowledge of the operations, but short of that,
All right, but I would like to see some solar lighting on it there.
so the building will be solar ready, 100%, and they'll also be EV charger ready. We design these buildings because most of the tenants are being pressed into a lot of green operations as it
Okay,
is.
That's good.
So,
All right, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
John Unucci, 129 Locust Court, Raritan Township. Yanuzzi, first name John. I'm very happy to hear that Woodmont is attempting to keep the traffic off of Case Boulevard. My question is, what's to prevent the trucks, even though you're encouraging not to make the right-hand turn, to turn that into a truck route, Case Boulevard, all the way down to the TD Bank and make the left to head back to Philadelphia on 202.
You're
Right
saying
now, there's
an
no-
empty truck after it leaves.
Yes, there's no consequences. I don't know if the planning board would have to recommend to the township committee. There's hundreds of homes in Sun Ridge, Concord Ridge, single-family dwellings. The property values and quality of life issues on those residents would be an undue hardship.
I completely agree, and I want to stress to you that the town council, that was their utmost determination, that we cannot have truck traffic there. We've done what we think will discourage it. Our expert, our traffic expert can talk about whether we can put up a sign that there's no trucks, no right-hand turn on Case Boulevard. I understand your point, which is a good one, that it might be an issue leaving rather than coming. But we can definitely talk more about other options.
Yes, the issue would be leaving the premises to avoid the circle. And the shortest route to 202 would be making the right on the Case Boulevard, passing the school through 4 or 5 developments,
Right.
tearing up the roads. There's children, there's school buses. It's a safety concern.
Totally understood, and that,
Yeah.
as you can see from the design, that's exactly what we don't want to happen. So
right.
our traffic expert will talk to that.
Like I said, I appreciate your concern and well-being for the residents of the
There's no
community.
reason for it. So the reason the site is very attractive to the marketplace, because it's on 202, not because it's on Case Boulevard.
Right. So what I would recommend, I don't know if the planning board, this is their authority, recommend to the township committee a no truck ordinance.
Now you're testifying,
Okay.
and then I'd have to
Okay.
swear you in, and I don't want
All
to
right.
do that,
No, I don't
violate the
wanna be
law.
sworn in.
Remember,
I'm
I
just a
just want to be
regular
clear.
guy.
I know it's, nobody's usually been here. You just ask him questions, he
Okay.
answers them.
All right, very good. So when do I get there?
Yes.
At the end?
Committee woman.
So
Oh, Mayor.
yeah, so thank you. What I can say on behalf of, if I could be so bold, our committee at large, yesterday at our township meeting, one of the discussion points for new business, so we discussed this in public, was that we look to fund and conduct, for lack of a better terminology, basically like a truck routing and road safety kind of study. What that would do at large for our entire township, not just this particular development, but we're looking at it for our entire community, is what are the most ideal paths for what we know now is a community where we have pass-throughs, but also stopping at certain developments like this one and others that exist today. So the outcome of that would be something that we could implement. We'd have to partner with county roads, because any of our roads that touch a county road, then we have to involve the county. Any of our roads that touch a state road, we have to work with DOT. But the idea is that the outcome would allow us to implement stronger ordinances and implementation plans that then could be policed, right, to keep accountability to the trucks, et cetera, around ideal routes that we identify. So it's a bigger plan. It will take time, as it always does, in partnership and coordination with county and state. But we believe that's in the best interest of the community, not just specific to a particular development, but for our community at large. So that is a plan that we as a governing body intend to conduct to address what we share with you as concerns.
All right, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir.
And just a side note for anybody, you are more than free to come up and take a look at the exhibit that was presented at any time. You could take pictures. I just had it up there because I couldn't see on the screen and I know you guys couldn't either. So please, at any time, feel free to come up and just take a look.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Clay Webster, 13 Garden Place, Raritan Township. Thank you for seemingly to address a lot of our concerns. Really appreciate it.
I have to tell you, it was the town council, town committee that really
Well-
drove the bus. Not that we're out to make any enemies, but I have rarely worked with a committee that was so strident in protecting its residents. I can say that honestly.
I'm responding to something you said about, you want to not cause traffic. And it sounds like traffic coming up north on 202 seems like it may be quite good. I'm wondering what kind of guidance, if you are giving guidance, you're obviously telling people not to use this side route. Trucks coming southbound on 202, how you're advising they get access, as well as trucks that need to go south.
I'm gonna take Mr. Belaro's advice, and I'm not a traffic expert, but we totally have a truck route conversation plan with our traffic engineer, and he's gonna cover that.
Okay, so you don't have any guidance ideas?
No, we definitely have guidance ideas. The plan would be you'd come south on 202.
Let's look at
Okay,
traffic
yeah,
expert.
let's-
Yeah.
fair enough.
We have a traffic expert who will address that, sir.
Tonight?
Yes.
Tonight.
If we reach.
Yeah, we get
Thank you.
there. It's a long night.
Yes, sir.
Ryan Rose, I'm at 68 Voorhees Corner Road. So pretty much right across from the.
So we have an image right from your front lawn.
Exactly. So that's what my question is, what am I gonna see when I walk out my front door? How much blockage are you gonna be putting there? Like, am I gonna get a warehouse and open my door?
When, so.
This is new. This is the emergency drive, and I'm into the development plan called the site, talk about the volume here, because there's gonna be a lot of that until then, self-house. And then
Two doors down from you. Then the existing topo takes over. the building. The noise.
So if you guys don't
Sir,
mind,
we need
if
you on the
you could
mic.
just, everybody just has to speak on the microphone, especially
Go
because
ahead, you go.
there's a lot of people online, and in case you guys have the same questions as those online, for them to be able to hear the answer.
And he didn't testify about noise, so you can't ask him questions about noise, but their engineer is gonna come up and then with noise and traffic, you could do that. Again, he's not an engineer.
Dr. John McDonough, John, McDonough, McDonough, 403 Wedgewood Circle in Flemington. I'm just having trouble visualizing where is the church, the school, the old bank, like 202 is on the right, which I think everybody thought it was on the left because I thought it was on the left. But where are those other buildings located on that map?
Taylor, could I ask you to just, I apologize. The one right before this. Thank you so much. Other way. Aerial.
A vacant?
Yeah, the old aerial, yeah. Second image.
The computer lags.
Gotcha. Okay, great.
So
here you can see
we're
this is-
looking at something entitled 408 US Route 202, Raritan Township, New Jersey, that is part of Exhibit 3.
That's correct. And you can see 202 runs along the top. The
On which, are we looking at the one on the
left to
screen?
right on the angle. No, you're looking at the screen. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Left to
okay,
right on an angle is 202.
okay.
As you get right about to the midpoint of the image, you see the old industrial building that was there.
One of your engineers have a pointer?
Right, because I
The
can't
red
really
dot.
see it. I see the hatch marks, but I don't know.
Okay, great. This is even better. So just real quickly, because this seems to be a theme here. This is 202. This is the old bronze facility. This is Voorhees Corner Road. And this is Case Boulevard. In this cross-hatching area is the 55 acres that we'll be donating to the town. The circles that you see here is the existing P&G right-of-way. And the dotted circles that you see down here is the deed restriction where there's no bill, right? So as I pointed out in my original testimony, you could see the church is surrounded and buffered, and these are really forever buffers, frankly. And the school is surrounded and buffered. The municipality obviously is free to do whatever they want in that 55 acres. That's up to the township committee. So just to get back to the original question, I apologize. This is 202, and this would be the entrance just a little further up to our proposal.
So that whole bronze complex comes down and that's part of the warehouse.
So the bronze complex was demolished, I'm going to say in 2019 or 20. And all that's left are footings, concrete footings and foundations.
And does it include the old bank on the corner or is that a separate property?
That's a separate property. A photo bomb.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Gus Mann, One Angus Road, live in Stonegate. So you talked about, pardon me? MANZ, I believe it, live in Stonegate. So we've talked about Voorhees Corner Road, Chase Boulevard, but what I haven't discussed is Reading Road, because I live in Stonegate and there are tons of cars that use Reading Road as a bypass to avoid the circle every rush hour in the morning, in the afternoon, tons of cars go on that. So my concern is that the truck driver don't do the same thing to avoid going down the circle, because that's a Raritan Township Road, not a county road.
Right. No, understood. We'll have a traffic expert testify as to traffic. That's not Mr.
And that goes
Santola's.
to my earlier comment. We are going to look at our community at large to prohibit things that you all have testified or questioned at this point, because we share concerns.
All right, thank you, Bob.
Okay, let's jump to the people who are live streaming this evening. If there is someone who has a question, please identify yourself by name and address. And again, you can ask questions of Mr. Santola's testimony. Anyone? Okay. There appears not to be, so we'll move on.
And unless anyone on the board has any objections, is Exhibit A 1, 2, and 3 now in the record?
I would agree.
So noted, included in the record.
And just another side note, we're just gonna have, A3 was a few multiple pages, so they're gonna be just lined up here if you wanted to take a look at them. And I also just want to note that even after this meeting has ended, the following day or within the next day or two, all of the meetings are recorded and they are posted on a YouTube page. So if you guys ever need to come back to this, you can always come back and rewatch the meeting. In a microphone, you can. In a microphone, you can.
Sir, you are?
So when you get close up.
Do you mind just identifying yourself?
Pardon me?
Just
Yeah,
identify
Phil
yourself.
Ruggieri, I'm the project architect.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Why is he up here?
I don't know, Mr.
Mr.
Ruggieri, not now,
Not now.
Well,
not now. I know you.
John's lost control of the meeting.
I thought he was one of your experts. I was wondering why he was coming to the microphone.
I don't know.
Out of order. Who's next?
Mr.
Okay,
Inglesino, it's up-
thank you. I'd like to bring up
back in your
Bill
court.
Lane of Menlo Engineering, who's our project civil engineer.
Mr. Chairman and the board, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Santola.
Mr. Lane, you've already been sworn in, so why don't you provide your educational and professional background for the board and advise of any licenses that you hold.
Sure. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. I've been with Menlo Engineering for approximately 39 years. I've been a licensed professional in the state of New Jersey probably for about 27 years now.
And you've testified before boards?
Probably about 100 or so throughout the state of New Jersey.
And you've been
including-
around.
Thank you.
Okay.
Acceptable.
You're a civil engineer?
Yes.
Thank you.
So we respectfully offer him as a professional.
He's acceptable.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Lane, please provide the civil engineering aspects of the project.
All right, I'll first start out with just describing a little bit of the existing conditions. The site's 28.66 acres. As you already heard, is formerly the U.S. Bronze Industrial Complex. With a large portion of the site was already cleared for the complex. Surrounding the site is 202 to the north, the JCP&L power line easement, St. Anna's Church to the east, Voorhees Corner Road to the south, and there's commercial properties and the Route 202 and Voorhees Corner intersection. Moving on to the proposal of the site. The site was designed in accordance with the U.S. Bronze Redevelopment District and conforms to the bulk requirements. The applicant is proposing a 353,803 square foot warehouse. There's 197 parking spaces, which will be laid out with hairpin striping to the west of the building, with handicap parking and EV spaces. We're also proposing a 6-foot wide sidewalk that leads from the parking lot to the building. With that, we're asking for a waiver from the 7 feet that's required. Additionally,
May I ask why there's a need for 1-foot waivers? Because we're gonna have to address that later.
well, this is, I mean, there's, the typical is 6 feet from the back of a curb, and this is a very low turnover. People come, that's it.
Was
if
that
you have-
waiver identified earlier? I know.
No.
I don't
No.
believe so. This
It
is
was
new.
not.
No, I'm kind of going through what, a couple of things that are variants from the ordinance, not the bulk requirements from redevelopment.
Okay, but you hadn't identified that you would be requesting a waiver.
Not
That's what
for
I'm
that,
saying.
no.
This is new.
Yeah, it was in the engineer's review letter, so I'm wanted to bring it up to make sure that we put it on the record. Yeah, again, going back to typically there's a 6-foot, I know in shopping centers, there's a lot of cars turn over and stuff like that, but this is like somebody parks, they leave. And again, it's up to the board's preference if they want to, we can just leave it at the standard 6 feet, or if they want to go to 7 feet. But we're asking for that waiver.
I think you're better off just doing another foot and eliminating one of your waivers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so that waiver is eliminated. I saw Mr. Santola indicating assent to the increase from 6 feet to 7 feet. So thank you for that concession.
Additionally, where we have our EV parking spaces, there's 2 charging stations that sit beyond the front yard setback. So for that, with an accessory use, that would fall in accessory use, so we need a variance from that on the setback.
You need a waiver.
Need a waiver.
Got to watch your.
Don't say
words.
variance.
We need a waiver.
What was that?
Saying variance, right?
Okay. So they're good. They don't even need a waiver.
They don't need a waiver.
Okay. So our planner, Ms. Caldwell, is indicating. Jeff?
And then we've also revised the ordinance where accessory structure can be.
All right, so you're good. So 2 of the things you were needing relief on are now gone.
It's getting better. Okay, sure.
Yeah, a little louder.
After that, the building was set up to place the loading and trailer parking space, as we indicated, on the east side along the stream corridor. That was set up so it was away from the residents. With that, we have 59 loading docks, 2 drive-in doors, and 61 trailer spaces. Access
So
to the
you've got
site,
36 doors. We want to get the numbers right. It's not 59.
it's 59. There's
No,
59
it's-
loading docks.
It's 36 is what Mr. Santola said. Right? And the others are banked.
36 doors.
Doors.
59 doors.
Loading positions. Okay.
All right, good.
Just want to be clear. Thank you.
That's from the redevelopment.
Right.
And why don't you explain when you talk about, everyone in the audience is going to know what 36 doors are. Why don't you explain what a loading position is when you say you have 59 loading positions? Your engineer really should do that.
Yeah,
but-
you should do it.
Okay, well, so you do
It's
that.
an operational issue. more than
Okay,
anything.
why don't you go through that?
So
and explain
there's
that.
56 loading positions here, and 36 of them will be equipped with a dock door at the outset. And then what's known as a knockout panel will be in the others, so that if in fact the tenant wants to add 3, 5, 7 more doors, they have the ability to do that. But I think the committee was thinking, maybe you don't need all these loading these dock doors right out of the box. So it's almost like banked parking for the
Right.
planning board.
So you're presently proposing 36 doors
Correct.
and how many knockout?
Oh, that's my public school math. 59, 36, 23 knockouts.
Okay, so there could potentially be, and it's allowed under the ordinance, 59
Correct. That's correct.
doors.
That's correct.
And then you have 59 loading positions.
Correct.
Got it. Thank you.
Apologize for the confusion.
Okay, access to the site is from a Route 202 driveway, which is 40 feet wide as it comes into the site. As mentioned before, there's also an emergency access out onto Voorhees Corner Road for emergencies only. There's adequate on-site circulation for trucks and emergency vehicles. And the developer will be providing wayfinding signs on site to make sure that everyone's
On that emergency access, and again, we all know what pavers and greenery are. Why don't you describe that a little bit so somebody looking at it from Voorhees Road is going to know what that emergency access for the vehicles looks like?
Yeah, the fire marshal wants it to be 20 feet. We had 18 feet on the plans. So most likely what it'll be is it's either gravel underneath grass or it's concrete blocks with grass growing in between. So it almost just looks like a grass path that's going to be like 20 feet wide and leading into the site.
And that has no capacity to bear the weight of a tractor trailer truck, does it?
It will need for emergency vehicles, so I have to have
Right.
some support on it, but we can gate it, we sign it, make sure that no one goes in and out. And again, it's only if the main driveway is blocked off, there's another means of being able to get into the
Yeah,
site.
typically the fire department and people have a key or
Yeah,
something.
knock
to
box,
open the
yes.
gate.
Yeah.
And there's a gate there, so trucks can't get through it.
Correct,
Only emergency access people.
correct.
Okay, thank you. Is that a lock box or what is that?
Knock
called?
box, they call
Knock
it.
box. There you go. Thank you.
Does it, if it's gravel or the stone, does that change the calculation from pervious coverage? The kind of material that's used for that drive?
No, because the gravel will be below grade or
It's counted as pervious because it's zoned with grass on top, so it actually does allow for water to permeate through. So for stormwater purposes, it's permitted.
We don't have a gate proposed there, but if you want to condition the approval on us putting in a Knox box, we're happy to do that.
Yeah, well, the fire department would prefer there being some type of means to prevent unauthorized access through there, be it a gate or some type of chain secured by a Knox padlock.
Mr. Concanon, we all know who you are, but maybe you would introduce yourself to members of the public.
My name is Dennis Concanon, and I serve as the Raritan Township Fire Marshal.
And the engineer was previously speaking. That's the township and board engineer.
So we'll agree to put in a chain with a Knox box and we'll confer with your engineer that there's agreement.
So
on what
noted.
exactly
If
that is.
approved, that'll be a condition of approval.
Continue.
Okay, continuing on, we're also proposing a 90 square foot sign out by the driveway along Route 202, approximately 6 feet high by 15 feet wide. We mentioned as the permits that we had received for land use, for flood hazard, wetlands, our water quality, our Hunterdon County soils certification, stormwater construction permit, et cetera. Moving on to the stormwater. Under our existing analysis, we have approximately 10 acres of the site draining towards Route 202, approximately 3.5 acres that go towards Voorhees Corner Road, and approximately 8 acres that go to the east down towards the stream corridor. Under our proposed conditions, we're looking to reduce the flow out to Route 202 down to 7 acres, 1.5 acres to Voorhees Corner Road, and 13 acres, which will be shifted around from the building and loading area. There'll be 13 acres that go down to the stream. With that, the drainage area, as I mentioned, out to Voorhees Corner Road has been reduced by approximately 2 acres. It's been cut in half, and there's no new impervious that's draining off out into that direction. The drainage onto 202 has been reduced by 3 acres and is also being routed through 2 bioretention basins, one to the west of the building and one to the north of the building along 202. Those are there to help reduce the flow, provide water quality. And those storms are being reduced from the 100-year to the 2-year storm by approximately 50% to 59%. Also in those basins, we've got substantial plantings to help with the water quality. We have at least 250 shrubs and approximately 600 ground covers within each one of them. On the drainage to the east to the stream corridor, while that area has been increased, that takes all the buildings going towards there. Majority of the loading area is discharging into there, and we're constructing a constructed wetlands basin. That's been designed to provide from 100 down to the 2-year storm from anywhere from 40% to 77% on the reductions of peak flows. The loading area, because it's surface runoff, they're directed through 5 new aquaponic water quality treatment devices, which will treat the water before it discharges into destructive wetlands. With that, we have non-structural strategies that are provided with our design, where disturbed areas will be permanently stabilized with soil erosion standards. We minimize impervious surfaces by meeting the minimum standards for driveways and parking stalls. We retain existing trees where feasible. We maintain existing drainage patterns. We minimize soil compaction. We selected native plantings and will mulch landscaping beds to retain moisture. And then we also provided the new current Echo standard catch basins to prevent source control.
Okay, what might be helpful, and I apologize for interrupting, but we take stormwater management extraordinarily seriously, and we especially do at that corner. And we've had a number of conversations in earlier meetings on this. Mr. Dargy's report specifically deals with a listing of questions specific to stormwater and other things, but you're on the stormwater topic. So can you please address your comments in relation to Mr. Dargy's
Let me do this
engineering report?
The benefit of members of the public. There are state and township requirements regarding stormwater, because when an applicant builds something, it can't be that the adjoining properties get flooded. So they have to submit a very lengthy stormwater management report. You can see this thing, it looks almost like an encyclopedia. And that goes over to our engineer, because we don't take this as gospel. And our engineer has to review that report, and then he comments and asks questions about that report. So what Mr. Gettings, our chairman, was just about to get to was to have them answer our engineer's questions. So just to let you know the process, we all know it, but I'm just showing you what we do up there.
Thank you.
And I would just also respectfully ask if there's any of the, we have the benefit of seeing the plan sheets for the stormwater management. Were you going to put up any exhibits or the sheets that were provided that show the stormwater management facilities that you're talking about?
Is it in the site plans?
In the site plan
Okay.
package, yes.
Just give me a couple minutes and I can pull it up.
Okay, because I think that would be helpful when you're talking about the location of the different stormwater facilities and the bioretention, to be able to point those out, and even if you use that or something else, it's helpful to the public.
Okay.
rendering might be your best bet. The site plan is going to have a bunch of lines. Rendering might be your best bet.
Yeah, that's what I asked you to do. So again, I'm going to direct you to Mr. Darcy's report, the stormwater section, number 43 on down. So I think you need,
But maybe if you could start by just.
in the context of that.
Yeah, just maybe review what you just told us verbally about the stormwater by pointing things out on that display.
Yeah.
Okay, so the area that's draining towards 202, we have a bioretention basin along 202, which is this highlighted area here. And also to the west of the building, there's a second bioretention basin. Discharge from the parking lot, some of the loading and front impervious is going to tie into these two basins. They will tie into the Route 202 system and go out under across 202. The building and a majority of the loading area will come into the proposed constructed wetlands, and that will discharge down into the stream corridor that flows down out to the north, away from the Voorhees Corner and 202 intersection. The drainage area that I was mentioned is we were having 3.5 acres that was going to go towards, under the existing conditions, goes towards Voorhees Corner Road. This area now gets cut off and directed down into the constructed wetlands. So this area is much reduced that comes down into Voorhees Corner.
Okay, thanks for the overview. Thanks, Dylan. Okay, so again, I'd go back to Mr. Darcy's report.
Okay.
Because he's got specific questions.
Yeah, I had a conversation earlier with.
No, that's fine, but we need it
Darkesh.
in the record and.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to go through item by item, or is it something that
He
we're?
wants to go through the
Yes.
storm
Okay.
report,
Yes,
item
please.
by item. He wants to go through Mr. Darcy's report, the stormwater section, item by item.
Recommend the grading and drainage also.
Start
Before that,
Yeah.
the section before it.
You start with reading.
Let's start with the stormwater. Then we can go to that.
Okay.
I agree with you, Michelle.
I think
Page
for
6 of
now,
10.
I'm just gonna keep this up on the screen. Just for now.
That's
Yep.
page 6 of 10, number 43. So it's the bold area. It looks as though a lot of the type is sort of descriptive. It looks as though the bold type is asking for stormwater calculations to be provided. You'll provide those?
Yes.
B, the applicant proposes to utilize 2 small-scale bioretention basins and 5 GI manufactured treatment devices to provide water quality. It's an observation, but can you just enlighten the board and the public as to what that means and why that's beneficial?
Yeah, you have to remove total suspended solids. So with the bioretention basins, that settles that out where you need to meet the 80%. We have more than that based with the bioretentions. And then additionally, before we go into the constructed wetlands, we have these manufactured treatment devices, which are the aquaponics, to help provide that water quality.
C, Mr. Chairman, appears to be an acknowledgement that the existing and proposed conditions are maintained, which satisfies the requirements under NJAC 7:85.4B1I. Similarly, on D, it looks as though that there's an acknowledgement that the applicant meets the requirements for green infrastructure by the use of the proposed bioretention basins and manufacturing treatment devices, but that the sizing should be reviewed to determine if these have been sized to meet stormwater requirements for the proposed project. And we don't have any objection to that.
Correct, no objection.
So that could be a condition, or would that be a condition or something that we would provide in connection with revised plans?
Either way, if it can be conditioned, it's fine.
Okay.
Whatever it needs to be
I'll
submitted.
defer to.
Yeah, that's something we can review as part of should the board act favorably as a condition of approval.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Number 44, I think we went through this and we said, okay, it says that direct entry time of concentration of 6 minutes is used frequently throughout the stormwater model. There's no longer a minimum or default value that may be used for the time of concentration. TC for the pre and post construction conditions must be calculated based on the requirements explained in the sites of regulation. We're okay with that.
Yeah, we can provide that.
We'll provide that. And same with 45 and 46, correct? We'll
Correct,
supply
yes.
what they're looking for.
A clarification on 45. If you, and it, I guess, goes with the other areas where you're willing to update your stormwater report. Will these updates or revisions substantially change the design of the stormwater management system or the ability of the site to hold the stormwater?
It may have to increase the basins, but everything that you see here will, same locations and stuff like that, they may need to be a little bit larger. And again, with existing conditions go up, proposed conditions go up. So we would have to take a look at it, but I don't anticipate the design changing any.
Mr. Lane and I did discuss that earlier today. And there may be some minor modifications that need to get made to the drainage basins to make them a little larger, maybe hold a little bit more. But the substance of the site plan, we wouldn't anticipate to change.
Okay, thank you.
And we'll provide the hydrographs referenced in number 46.
Yes.
And in number 47, can you address that?
Yeah, we'll update the calculation and the time of concentration for the water quality devices.
Okay. And number 48, with regard to the aquaponics, can you address the comments there? Does this relate to water quality in the loading areas?
Yes.
Yeah, it relates to the sizing. I think the method that was used to calculate the flow, it was a rational method, and I think they say that you should use a rational method. Okay. But I don't think the model or the sizing might change, but the location would stay the same. So it won't make a substantive or appreciable change as far as the site plan and the parking lot goes. The unit might have to get a little larger, possibly.
But you're willing to
We
work
can
that
agree
all
that, yes,
out
yeah,
with
yes,
the
we'll
engineer.
provide those calculations.
Yeah, same thing. We're willing to provide the information required in number 49, correct?
Yes.
Same with number 50, correct?
Yes, we'll separate out the analysis.
And you'll do the revised calculations asked for in number 51, correct?
Yes.
And we'll provide the calculations being requested in 52.
Yes.
And you'll add the note on the plan as requested in 53.
Yes.
54 says it's recommended to inspect the existing pipe to determine its condition. Were you clear as to what pipe exactly was being referred to there?
Yeah, that's actually the pipe that crosses under 206, 202. The stormwater management basins are discharged to that existing pipe. What we're asking is that pipe be inspected and videoed to make sure it's in good condition.
We'll do that, correct?
Yes.
Excuse me, wasn't there also a question on the adequacy of that pipe? Is that a?
That's part of the,
transportation
yeah, it's
question?
part of the investigation.
Part of
Absolutely.
it,
Yeah, that's on the environmental commission.
Yeah.
The applicant did provide calculations. Mr. Chairman, I apologize, to verify that the capacity of the pipe is sufficient, as long as the condition of the pipe is, is good.
And I think,
We'll verify.
and those calculations were used in order to obtain our DEP permits, correct?
The DOT, yeah, the DOT's.
DOT, yeah.
Analyzing
Right,
drainage
so,
along there also.
right, so that's is it fair to say that that's a DOT jurisdiction there?
Well, I mean, the townships, I mean, you're discharging water through there, and I don't know that the DOT really cares all that much. We want to make sure the pipe's in good shape.
Okay. So we'll take a look. Mr. Chairman, 55, 56, and 57, we will satisfy as conditions of approval, and just for the public's benefit, it's providing things like BMP manuals, operations and maintenance manuals and the like, which is, I think sort of boilerplate stuff, which we'll do. And I think that kind of concludes the stormwater portion of the letter.
Yeah. So I got the retention or detention basin. Where does their water go? Does it go to the front, the back, each one as it starts seeping down?
On the bioretention basins, if you look at those in cross section, there's about 2 feet of soil. So the water's got to trickle through there. Then it goes through 6 inches of sand, and then it falls into gravel, and then there's an under drain. So eventually the water, after it slows it down, it trickles down, it gets to the under drain, and then it'll go to the outlet structure and then discharge downstream. The larger flows, once it gets in those bioretentions above 7-8 inches, it goes to an outlet, and then it'll act as a regular detention basin, then and go down. And those 2 basins go towards 202 up in the front.
And then the big question, not an engineer, but if we have 9 inches of rain in 4 hours, what happens to the intersection of 40th Road and 202? Will that be better?
Well, from our standpoint, because in the analysis, like I had mentioned, we were looking at 3.5 acres from our analysis that were going in that direction. We've now cut that down to 1.5 acres, and we're not sending any impervious coverage out in that direction. So we're cutting that drainage area going in that direction by half, by more than half.
Is it true that any of the parts, sorry. Is it true that any of the parts that you're actually developing are being rerouted to your detention basins and things, and it's parts of your site that aren't being touched that are still going that direction?
We're still following the same pattern. There's drainage area that goes to 202. There's drainage area that goes out to Voorhees, and then there's drainage area that goes down towards the stream corridor. The only drainage area that was increased is the area that's going to the stream corridor. And that's why we have the large constructed detention wetlands basin. And that's because we're bringing the whole building roof into there. So you have to shift a little bit area. But ideally, where you want to bring the drainage is down to that stream corridor, which away from that intersection. It comes down to a low spot. It has the width to be able to handle it. We have this large basin that'll reduce the flow over time. So that's the only area that's been increased in area, but it's been reduced in the rate of volume that comes out of it into that stream corridor.
And where does that stream flow toward?
That goes to the north, goes back under 202, further down to the east, and then eventually makes its way out to the Raritan River, I believe.
Is there development? Is there development over there that could be potentially impacted? On that side? Thank you.
Okay, also in the engineering report, there's a section right before the one that we just addressed, grading, drainage, and utilities. Can you just address those, please? Yeah, that's in the engineering report.
That's on page 5 of 10.
Yes, sir. Starting with bullet 32.
So, there isn't any plan to disturb that easement, correct? That's a municipal easement.
Yeah, there's a conservation easement where the stream runs through. So we're looking to bring our outfall, our riprap head down into that, so that we have a positive drain outlet towards there.
I guess my question is that an existing easement or is that a proposed?
That's an existing.
That's an existing easement.
So you are disturbing within that easement for your stormwater out?
Yes.
I guess the question is, how do you, I guess, how does that mechanism work? Where do you get the approval to do that? Would you have to petition the township committee for that?
I believe in the document, it said approval by the township planner, if I remember correctly.
Oh, look at you go.
You're referring to the redevelopment agreement. So it's in there?
No, to what that easement, that actually easement, the language in the easement itself that was created. I don't know
the
how long
language
ago.
of that easement. Okay.
Whatever.
Into the microphone.
Jeff, what year was that easement?
Into the microphone.
When we're talking about that conservation easement, can we describe it? We have it here.
I don't have that off the top of my head, but I think
I think we're talking about an easement from March of 1990.
1990? Even I wasn't here representing Raritan then.
I think we should probably confirm that.
Yeah, why don't we do that at the next hearing? Because we're obviously not going to finish tonight.
Yeah, we'll confirm. that.
So someone can circulate that and we could
So we're
decide
gonna be
what needs to be
disturbing
done
that
with that
easement?
issue.
Yes, we can put a river.
Okay, thanks.
All right, and just going through there again, I mean, 33, this will provide the spot grades, correct?
Yes,
Same in 34, correct?
correct.
Will provide the labels required in 35, correct?
Yes,
And the diameter, material length, and the various information that's being requested there, correct?
correct.
And the cleanouts will be depicted. You'll revise the plans to provide for that, correct?
Yes,
And 37 will also comply with the request there, correct?
yes, we'll add manhole in between.
And again, Mr. Chairman, all the comments 38 through 42, we will comply with the requests of the board engineer.
Great.
And we'll sort out whether that will be done as part of sort of plan modifications or if necessary, conditions of approval, but none of the comments in the letter are objectionable.
Okay. So I'm going to take the Environmental Commission's report because there were several comments on stormwater there as well. Folks, this sometimes gets very tedious and there's a lot of detail, but it's important. And you all know why it's important with that corner at Voorhees Corner and 202. And that's why it's important to have all the details down.
So you have the environmental, okay. I guess we have, so in number 1, it says that the area currently floods in heavy rains and the soil permeability rates are very low. Stormwater calculations should be based on new inland flood requirements, but that's not correct. Is that right?
I mean, based on our approval from the DEP, we use the stormwater calculations that were allowable at the time of the permit. So new inland flood, we'd have to rerun the calculations, which we
But
can.
we're not required to, in other words, we have our DEP permits based upon the calculations that were required of us at the time, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that's not something that would apply to us. Number 2, a portion of the site discharges directly into an 18-inch drain that runs under 202. I presume that's the drain that we were talking
Yes,
about
it
a
is.
moment ago. Is the drain big enough to handle the overflow? Either way, approval is needed from DOT to do this. That's why I thought that this was something that was really DOT jurisdiction. Board wants to know sort of what the condition of the pipe is. We've agreed to do that investigation to determine what the condition of the pipe is. So we'll do that, right?
Correct.
Okay. Number 3 says it's difficult to tell locations from the test pit map. The soil testing shows refusal at a majority of test pits at 4 feet or less. How will the proposed infiltration basins to a specified depth of between 141 to 143 feet be reached when the elevation of the site is mainly 150 feet? Can you address that?
Yeah, these aren't infiltration basins. Usually that's just water that perks down into the ground. These are bioretention basins, which have I mentioned before about the soil section and then the sand and the gravel, and then they go to under drains and drain out. So there is no technically infiltration here. It infiltrates through till it reaches that outlet pipe and then drains out. So these are bioretention basins, not infiltration basins.
Just clarification, though, going back to 2, if the video camera of the drain that goes under 202, if there is anything that needs remediation, who oversees that? How, what is the process of the recourse of action?
Yeah, if the drain's clogged or the pipe is damaged, then you don't have adequate
We're
flow.
all just assuming that it's gonna be
So-
fine, but what if it's not? What happens?
You wanna do it? So typically, if there is an issue with that pipe that crosses under 202, the applicant would be responsible for fixing that. And they would have to, depending on the type of repair, they would have to seek permission from DOT to do that, or,
So they have to fix it, but
Yeah.
DOT has to approve them fixing it.
depending on the, if they have to open up the road, DOT would have to
Right.
approve that.
And we'll
Most-
agree to do all that.
Yeah, most repairs can be done without opening up the road.
I
Usually
would
you can
think
get in,
it
you can
would
get in
have
there
to
with,
be.
with trenchless repairs and cut any roots, line the pipe if necessary. I'm sure that the applicant will do everything necessary to not have to deal with DOT.
But
on
if
something
the
like
pipe,
that.
if the pipe needs repair, the applicant will agree to make the repair as a condition of approval.
Okay, hold on, I'm confused. They're responsible to fix the pipe even if the pipe isn't on their property?
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
Okay.
I know, but still,
Point number 4 is that deals with green infrastructure. We do have the comment from the board engineer that the project complies with green infrastructure. And we already have our flood hazard permit issued. I don't know what else there is to say about number 4. And number 5, that they're recommending off-site hydraulic analysis due to the frequent flooding that occurs. But again, I think this is something that DEP has reviewed as part of the flood hazard application. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that flood hazard permit has been granted by the DEP already. So that has been reviewed and has been approved by the DEP as evidenced by the flood hazard permit that I referenced at the beginning of the meeting. There were traffic concerns noted by the Environmental Commission, which we would respectfully request be deferred for the traffic expert.
Yeah.
And then there are other concerns that I think kind of may or may not pertain to the engineer. So let's go through it. Other concerns, number 1 is we should verify the analysis of the closure samples from the underground storage tank removal to confirm the contamination has been successfully removed. Again, that's a DEP, I think, jurisdictional issue. Is that correct?
Yes.
But did you get, in your documentation, it talks about you're waiting for receipt of a final site remediation?
Yeah, well, and I guess maybe you guys have someone that'll give a rundown on how the remediation process works for the site. I don't want to speak for the applicant, but yeah, there is a process by which the applicant has to hire a licensed site remediation professional to oversee remediation of the project site. If there's contamination found, there's a remedial action work plan that's developed. And then once that's followed, there's a remedial action outcome that's filed by the LSRP to the DEP. And that's sort of a separate and parallel track to what the board is dealing with here.
Yeah, I was just, because you're one, I believe it was the EIS, or one of the reports talked about the tank removal and that you were waiting for final.
Right.
In my shorthand, I would call it a clean letter, that.
You're thinking of a no further action letter,
Yeah.
right? But they don't issue no further action letters anymore. It's basically a remedial action outcome that the LSRP issues to the DEP, and the DEP approves that.
So this is something, there will be, I'm sure Mr. Bellardo will have in his resolution, a comment that we have to comply with all laws. Candidly, this is not an issue that this board has jurisdiction over. This is a DEP jurisdictional issue. And we will have to comply with all of the issues that relate to the DEP.
Totally agree. I was just, because part of your documentation submitted to the board referenced this process.
Yep.
And the site cleanup, and left hanging this issue of the tank. So I was just, we don't have jurisdiction. I was just.
We're also letting the public know that any issues with respect to prior underground tanks and contamination have to and will be addressed, if not overseen by this board, but the state NJDEP.
And
correct?
they are. That is absolutely correct.
Okay, good. That's good to know.
Very correct. Two infiltration basins are not to be used on contaminated soils.
Hold on a second. Sorry, before you jump ahead. The fact that it says that from the Environmental Commission, they have seen copper stained shale still visible. How does that affect their, like, yeah, is that under that, or is it something that the township has to address?
I don't know what copper stain.
Well,
It's really a question for our engineer.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
Sure.
Is it a DEP issue or?
Anything having to do with remediation is the DEP issue. If the site is a contaminated site, the applicant isn't allowed to do anything that involves infiltration of the stormwater to make it sort of, spread, I guess, contamination. The applicant's stormwater actually doesn't propose that. So
Okay,
The stormwater
that's
management.
where I was lost,
Yeah.
how it was relating.
Yeah, so then I think that's the next comment that they were getting to is you can't, the regulations don't allow infiltration on a contaminated site. The applicant's not actually proposing infiltration. They're actually proposing a filter, more or less, for lack of a better term. The basins that they have are filtering the water, and then they have an under drain that actually takes that stormwater away, so it doesn't actually get into the ground.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay. So I think that kind of covers 1 and 2, unless anybody has anything additional on that. We're not going to prepare an air quality analysis. Again, we don't know who the tenant's going to be, and the township committee has made the determination that the use is not only appropriate for the site, but has been legislated to be permitted for the site. Again, the applicant and its tenants will have to comply with all state, federal laws with respect to the operation of the site. Number 4, listed rose varieties in the landscape plan are non-native and should be replaced with native varieties. Bill, you want to address that?
We have no problem changing them to native.
We have no objection to that. We would work with, your landscape architect to, comply with their comments, but conceptually, there's no problem with that. If approved, it's their understanding that the developer will purchase adjacent lot 40, lot 5 to be donated to the town. I think that Mr. Santola addressed that in his comments. Whether or not the parcel is subject to Green Acres deed restriction is not an issue for this board, and certainly not within the control of the applicant. That's not an issue for either of us here. And
I think it was just to get it on everyone's radar.
Yeah, no, understood.
I just, with respect to 5, it's,
I think we addressed that.
yeah, I know.
I'm
I
sorry.
mean, the township committee decides whether it will or will not be subject to Green Acres.
Right, we're just donating the property.
Right,
That's
I
up
mean,
to
I-
the
Verbiage infers that it would be your determination, and it would be the governing body.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah,
our,
there-
we're,
Right.
We're not going to decide as a planning board. You're going to work that out with the township committee.
correct. And then I think we addressed the community solar project on the roof or warehouse to be solar ready. I think Mr. Santola indicated, so. So that's it. I mean, I think there's a summary here, but it doesn't go over anything new. So
you can go back to the engineering report.
Okay, so where would you like to pick up on the engineering? report?
Go back to the engineering report, see.
Hello. Beginning.
The waivers.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion.
Why don't we go over the waivers on page 2? There's 4 listed.
Waiver number 1,
I think I think we can agree to remove that waiver, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so we're gonna comply.
for number 1, you don't have to.
we're going to comply with number one.
Okay, so waiver number one. is-
Right, I want my engineer to.
Yeah, we could provide the hairpin stripe.
Yeah, so that's no longer needed.
Right.
Okay.
By my count, 1, 2, and 3 are actually eliminated.
Wait, wait, hold on.
Eliminated.
I can't hear.
I'm
Two
sorry, I
was-
apologize. 1 and 2 are eliminated.
Yeah, two was the sidewalk. You're gonna go from 6 feet to 7 feet, so you no longer need a waiver on 2.
Do they recalculate impervious then based on that? Fresh?
Yeah, there will be, they'll have to update that.
That's not gonna put them over.
It won't make a significant impact based off the overall percentages, but they will
You
recast.
still
it,
need to recalculate. Okay.
yes.
What about 3?
Bill, what about 3?
Yeah, I mean, we're 3.88 to where 4 is required. We're like right there. But based on where we can actually place lights on the building, we're asking for that de minimis waiver. And really, if you round up, it's really 4. So we're hoping that we can apply for that waiver. There's more than adequate light out there.
I don't have an objection to the waiver. The idea is, we have the ratio requirement so that you don't get hot spots and cold spots, for lack of a better term, for lighting. And given that they're just about close to where they need to be, I don't have an objection to the waiver.
Right, and the way we decide waivers is whether the
It's
grant of the
reasonable.
waiver is reasonable under the circumstances, and you believe is.
Given this type, absolutely, Mr. Velarde.
Okay,
Given-
so we only had one waiver, and the board at the end will decide whether, obviously, to grant that, but our engineer has recommended it.
Yep, understood. Mr. Chairman, where would you like to, what would you like us to address next?
Well, I think we skipped over these general comments. That should be really quick, some of the answers to these questions.
So I think we provided testimony with regard to the hours and
hours, you did.
days of operation. We don't have a tenant at the moment, so we can't.
Sorry, clarification. Is it 7 days a week, 5 days a week? I know we heard 24/7 in terms of hours, but with respect. to
Yeah, no,
days-
that's what's permitted. So we essentially, with respect to all of these, we will operate within the confines, the guardrails, as it were, of the redevelopment.
I don't believe there was specificity to number of employees for this size project. Do you
Well,
have-
but there are parking requirements, so we're going to have to comply with the parking requirements. And I think, the redevelopment plan was probably, well, Bill, why don't you testify to how the redevelopment plan was conceived with regard to the number of employees, but as was testified to by Mr. Santola, it was envisioned that this would be a 1 or perhaps 2 tenanted building.
Correct, yeah. And
So,
yeah, the redevelopment plan talked about the amount of square footage, one space per, I think it was like 1,900 square feet. So I believe it was like 186 spaces. We're at 197, so we're more than adequately parked for a building the size.
There's no issue on the parking spaces, right?
No,
Not
not
at all.
There's not, and frankly, the hairpin striping thing, that's typically something you see at like supermarkets and where you have shopping carts. So I don't have an objection, but if that wants to do hairpin, that's fine, but if they don't, I'm fine with that too.
and Bill, if you can address number 6.
Yeah, the right of ways for the power companies on site. The ones along the stream corridor to the east, those are going to remain in place. Anything up above along to the west, those were right of ways or right of way easements that satisfied the electricity to the US Bronze facility. So those, I don't know, say we can probably have them vacated, but I know that the applicant has been in discussions with them to allow what we're looking to put out here because they've seen these plans and okayed them.
And just for the record, it's JCP&L. So
Okay.
we've heard PSE&G tonight. We've got NCP&L. The right answer is JCP.
JCPL. All right, that's why you're the chairman. All right, Bill, number 7.
This has to do with that lease area in the bottom right corner.
This is for the cell tower?
For the tower.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they have an easement there and they have an access easement. So their access easement comes off the cell tower, follows their same path. It will have to be altered at the main driveway. So, but other than that, they're still going to have access in there, but we'll have to alter that at the main driveway entrance.
Right, and I think all we're asking is the reconfiguration and any extinguishing of easement, that those documents be provided to the board attorney and other professionals for review.
Yeah, of course, we'll do that as a condition of approval. Hey, Bill, the purpose of the easement located within the Voorhees Corner Road, is that what the county asked for?
Yes, the county asks for a maintenance easement where their crossing is.
Okay. And we will comply with number 10, correct?
Correct.
And number 11, we'll comply with as well. I think it was recommended there'll be a lot consolidation. I think there'll also be a subdivision forthcoming as well.
That can all get done as part of that one application.
Well, yeah, okay, yep. Number 12, the truck circulation plans. I think we've agreed to do that, correct?
Correct.
We're still going to hear the traffic expert.
Yes.
provide testimony.
That's correct. There's a letter from the fire marshal we should probably review separately. Number 14, we'll comply with that. We will obviously agree to meet all noise requirements defined by DEP, which we're required to do. With regard to, want me to keep going, Mr. Chairman?
Why don't we keep, well, I tell you what, it's 10 to 9. Why don't we take a 10-minute break? And then pick up at the site plan comments.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, on site plan number 16, Mr. Chairman, we will agree with that comment. We will comply. Number 17, we will comply, and we note that the DOT access permit is pending. Number 18, Bill, I'll ask you to address numbers 18 and 19.
Yeah, we provide the correct number of EV and accessible spaces. Right now, because the applicant is hoping to have one tenant, we set everything up for EV and handicap spaces at the office, which is up in that northwest location. If there are two tenants, then we will agree to split and put them over at the other side of the building where we have shown for a potential office.
And number 19, is that you or the architect? Looks like a bit of a tweener, but.
Yeah, we have a light right next to the dumpster. There's the light set back far enough that the swing of the door should be fine. I don't see any issues with it. If we know that there is, we definitely could slide that around a little bit or move the dumpster over.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Number 20.
That kind of goes along with like the EV and the handicap spaces. Right now, if there's one tenant, we're anticipating only one enclosure. If we have a second tenant, we'll definitely look to put one on the other side of the loading area. So we can accommodate that, but right now we're looking to just do the one.
So just, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, real quickly, on both those items, would it be your request that should you have two tenants, that you would submit a plan to the township engineer's office for like an administrative approval on the?
Yeah, that'd be good, yes.
I mean, if the board's okay with that, I guess the essence of it is if they have two tenants, the EV and ADA spaces really should be split up because it's a fairly large site.
That makes sense.
Something like that doesn't necessarily, as long as there's no relief required, something like that, I think is something that could get approved administratively by my office.
I would
the
think
board,
so.
so feels.
Same with the trash enclosure?
Yeah, both
They need a
items.
second one?
Absolutely. All three items, sorry, EV, ADA, and the trash.
Does have to be submitted to the township as well.
Yeah, it would actually be through the township. It would get submitted to Taylor, who's the boss, and then it goes to the office.
We're amenable to that. No problem. We will provide the dimensions. I'm on 21. We will agree to provide the dimensions showing the setback. It is recommended we will comply with number 22. And candidly, Mr. Chairman, we will comply with numbers 23 through 30. None of those comments are objectionable to the applicant.
Sidewalk you took care of already.
31 you took care of.
Yeah, that's already done.
You just said 23 to 30.
31. The balance of the comments. We have
Okay, thanks.
no issue with of complying with the balance of the comments. I apologize if I misspoke and said 30. I should have said 31.
That's all right.
I think we've already covered grading and drainage. We've covered storm management.
I think we're on landscape lighting, number 58.
Landscape lighting,
So if you want to hold that for the,
we can hold that for now.
Yep.
Soil erosion. Bill, do you want to handle those?
Yeah, we can add the temporary stockpile area.
61, we already discussed 61 as part of the stormwater.
And I think, Bill, we've indicated internally that we're agreeable to comments 62 through 67. Is that correct?
Correct.
We have no objection there. We've addressed the other
you address the permits.
permits and other
The start.
approvals. That concludes the engineer's report.
Okay. Good. Are there any other board questions for Mr. Lane in that testimony? No. Okay, I'm going to kick it out to the people in the room. If you have any questions for Mr. Lane on the testimony you've heard with respect to any number of engineering related items, now would be the time to come on up to the microphone and again, give your name and address. And sorry, you will have to restate it, so it's on the record.
Karen Becker, 14 White House Way. So I have environmental concerns. So one of the things that you had mentioned, you had asked about before was the solar. You're saying it's solar ready. So who is actually responsible for getting the solar installed? Is that the tenant or the builder?
Let me defer to Mr. Santola on that.
So typically you want to do solar on the roof of a building like this, but if a tenant, so certain tenants, it's tricky to do depending on what the load is that they're accepting. So I don't want to make the promise to you because I don't know 100%, but the goal would be to be solar ready for a reason because we would like to do solar on the roof. But that decision has to be made hand in hand with the user.
Okay, so there's no guarantee that it.
There's no guarantee.
Okay, right. And then I have a question about the inland flooding. So you said that the permits were granted prior to the new laws. So could you let us know what the difference would be? And would there be any way for you to change the way that you're going to do the construction and deal with the inland flooding issues to accommodate the new laws that have been set?
Well, we're not going to, we're going to comply with the laws that are applicable to the project. We're not going to do more than that. That's what the project has been designed to, and that's what's required under the law. So that's what we're going to do. In terms of a comparison, I don't know how to answer that. I don't know if you can even answer that question, but we don't believe that that's really not a relevant question.
Well, I do.
Well,
I mean,
it's
so
not
there-
irrelevant.
So there are new guidelines, and I understand that when your permit was issued, the old guidelines were in place. So I'm asking you as the expert, what are the differences? And is there any way that you can accommodate what you're doing to fit into the new guidelines?
You're talking about DEP permits, correct?
Yeah, I mean,
we don't have jurisdiction over.
I
DEP
understand that,
permits.
but that as.
They have to comply with what DEP requires them to comply with, no more, no less.
Right. And we did that, so.
As long as they have DEP approvals, we have no jurisdiction over that.
So even if they would like to go above and beyond what's required, they don't.
It's their application. Their application is to comply with township ordinance standards. And under section 22 of the municipal land use law, they're responsible for obtaining any and all outside approvals, including from DEP. If they get an outside approval from DEP, we have no jurisdiction to challenge that approval.
So if it floods like crazy, we just have to
Well,
deal with it.
they testified that it's not going to flood like crazy, and I think your engineer can go over it again, Mr. Iglesino, but under the standards, when you, and I'm not an engineer, but when you design a stormwater management system, it has to equal or make better the current situation, correct?
I'm going to defer that to my
And
engineer.
I'll defer that to our board engineer and ask him what his analysis of the stormwater management report is, whether it's going to equal or make the current situation with respect to drainage and flooding better.
Sure. Yeah, the requirements that are in place that the applicant required to comply with state that the stormwater that's running off of the site has to be, the peak rate has to be reduced by certain factors. For the 2-year storm, it's a 50% reduction in peak rate. For the 10-year, it's a 25%, and for the 100-year storm, it's a 20% reduction. They do meet that requirement. So they're required to reduce the peak rate, but that's actually what flooding is. You know, the main factor in flooding is the rate at which water is leaving the site. So they're basically holding water on their site and then allowing it to run out off their site at a controlled rate to control that flooding. So that they meet those requirements. Just to answer your question, and I think Mr. Ling probably can answer it too. The change in the rules was that the DEP now, as of recently, requires the applicants to calculate the projected flows from basically the year 2100. So there are factors that they must apply the current rate by, but it's not that you hold that water that's from the projected flow. It's actually you have to calculate what the runoff is. And if your existing condition experienced that projected flow, and then what your proposed condition experienced that projected flow. So you're not the requirement isn't to hold some extraordinary amount of runoff based off of a future storm. It's actually to make sure that you're comparing the impact from that projected storm in both conditions.
Right, and I know that the requirements had changed. I was just asking if they would accommodate those changes, because we've had terrible flooding there. It's really bad. And I know you don't live here, but it's been very bad at that area. So if there's any way to accommodate that, look into that, we appreciate it. And then.
Can I just interrupt on that? So just so you understand, we went back and forth with you about 4,000 times. And finally got them comfortable with what we were doing under the rules that were in play then, right? We didn't know what the new rules were going to say, the public comment said it. They asked us to go back and open up that permit and go back through the months and months it took us to get the DEP. And I'm certainly not familiar with
I wouldn't
DEP
want to have to do
processes.
that.
So that's the issue. So we're not trying to, I think you've seen us be very cooperative with the committee and with the board, and we just can't be asked to throw away that months and months of work with DEP and start over again when we're not required.
So, and I understand that, but I'm asking if you have to, go this deep by the permit that when you applied, but now you're able to go deeper, whatever you have to do or higher to accommodate the flooding. Do you have to ask them, and if it's just making it better?
Why did Bill, the question, but the new plan, Bill with those plans, you wouldn't want to embarrass them, because that's what
Okay, and I just would, so who do we talk to with the DEP? Is there a name that we could go back to ask questions of you as the public, to ask who we work with specifically? Who's in charge of projects?
It's just not under our jurisdiction, and we need to move the meeting along.
Okay, anyone else? Yeah, sure.
John McKay, 122 Featherbed Lane, Flemington, New Jersey. Actually, Raritan Township. I think the engineer talked about parking spaces.
Yes,
How many parking spaces are going to be?
197.
And how many are going to be handicapped?
I believe there's 8.
Is that the requirement by the state?
Yes.
I think it's a little low. Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Our board engineer is indicating they comply with the state handicap requirements.
Thank you.
Welcome, sir.
Yeah, my name is Andrew Kurz, 8 Samuel Drive, Flemington. Excuse me? KURZ. And so my question has to do with the building process itself. I'm aware that the bronze facility is contaminated for quite a number of years. There have been a number of explosions on the property. What steps are being taken for remediation and or if there's already remediation, what guarantee that is there that there's still non-toxic materials on the ground that will be released during the construction?
Well, again, those kinds of issues are not within the jurisdiction of the board. There is an LSRP. And that's, you know.
Let's do this. Why don't we explain? We realize contamination isn't within the jurisdiction of the board. Why don't we explain what Mr. Board Engineer, explain the process, what an LSRP is, what that person has to do, how the person has to certify, whether if he certifies wrong things, he loses his license or her license, and how the NJDP reviews that process. So we could give the public some level of surety that any contamination out there at this site, and we all know what was manufactured there, will be cleaned up according to state standards.
Certainly. So when a site is found to be contaminated, the owner of the property actually is required to retain a professional who's licensed. That's what LSRP stands for, licensed site remediation professional. And it's that individual's job. Then they have a license and they're obligated to evaluate the property, develop do all the testings required to determine what the contamination is, what the extent of the contamination is, and develop a plan to remediate that contamination in accordance with guidelines that are set forth by the DEP. They prepare that plan, they submit that what's called remedial action work plan to the DEP. DEP then reviews that, approves it, and then they implement that remedial action work plan. And then they actually have to file with the DEP a remedial action outcome, which says this is what we did to remediate, and these are the results. And then they also file within that any long-term monitoring that has to get done along with the site. So it's a separate process that the applicant is required to undertake with the DEP of hiring that individual. How the township, or I'm sorry, how we as a board sort of tie that process together, at least, is we don't have jurisdiction over that, but what we do is we require that as part of the final site plan approval, should the board act favorably, prior to this plans being signed off, we request or we require that licensed site remediation professional at least provide a certification to me that the plans as prepared by the applicant are consistent with their remedial action work plan. So there's no conflict between the two. So what they're proposing doesn't conflict with the remedial action that's being undertaken on the site. So that's how that process is sort of checked in by the board through that process. We don't have jurisdiction over how they do it. We just have the ability to ask them to certify that what the board is approving doesn't conflict with what the remedial action plan is.
So if I heard it correctly, then they're under, the majority of the runoff is only going to three-phase stream.
The stormwater runoff, a large portion.
And so therefore, if it's not remediated correctly and or even have a monitoring system, which would detect that it's still there.
Right.
To whatever degree that is, which means there is also potential.
So the licensed site remediation professional is going to be reviewing the site plans to make sure that what the applicant is proposing for their stormwater management or the site in general is consistent with the remedial action that they're preparing for the site. So they're responsible for reviewing the plan to make sure that that the site plan that's being approved and that's going to be constructed doesn't conflict with their remedial action.
But you still have control over what goes into the street and what goes into 202 versus what goes into.
Well, yeah, we have, as far as we have review authority over that, yes. There are certain specific requirements that Mr. Bellardo
So
went
it
into
sounds like
earlier.
there's an overlap.
Yeah, absolutely. There's overlap between what, DP approves and what we review, what the LSRP does and what we review. So there are checks on all those things. Absolutely.
It's a tight process, and those folks down in Trenton at DEP are very serious about making sure that any contamination is remediated.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Also, just to clarify, your system for stormwater runoff, it doesn't just go straight into the stream. It gets treated and it gets filtered, and then it eventually seeps into the normal waterway for
Correct.
evacuation. Okay.
Okay, so let's throw it out to anyone who has joined us through the live stream this evening. Is anyone out there who has a question for Mr. Lane and his testimony? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lane. Let's call up Mr. Vajiri.
Why don't we do the architect? Because we don't take any new testimony after 10 and.
That's the architect.
That is the architect.
Oh, okay, good. Well, I didn't hear you, but like mine. And then if we have to
We
come
have
back.
Mr. Vajiri coming
just
up
have the
now. We have to
traffic.
come back. We'll have traffic as a
Right.
separate thing.
And Mr. Ruggieri's been anxious to get up here, so let's get him on. Okay.
Try getting up here already.
All right, Mr. Ruggieri, come on over. It's time. We need you to sit down. The long-awaited microphone is yours.
Thank you.
Okay, so you've already been sworn. You understand that, correct? Yeah. And Mr. Ruggieri, you're a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey?
In good standing.
And you
yes.
have been for how long?
Since 1981.
And you've testified before boards such as this?
I have.
And you've
Many-
been accepted many times, correct?
Many times, absolutely.
Yeah, you're
Where'd
acceptable.
you go to college? I always ask
I
that.
went to college at Iowa State University.
Oh, okay. Cyclones.
Cyclones, yes, thank you.
Good wrestling program.
That's all they had. It was good. The football team was
We got a
terrible.
couple wrestling fans up here, one from Penn State, in fact.
There was a guy in my class, my architectural class, that went to the Olympics and brought back a gold medal. Which was really cool.
Kelly Ward?
What's that?
Kelly Ward?
No, it was Ben Peterson.
All right. All right, well, you're accepted. then.
Anyway, I'm sorry.
Not as a wrestling expert, but as an
Well-
architectural expert.
Too much.
Now that we're done with wrestling, why don't you discuss the architectural aspects of the project for the board and the public?
Could I work just from a standing position?
You certainly may if you
Just
take
take
this
the microphone.
microphone.
Okay, so a lot of what you're going to hear from me, you've kind of heard already from everybody else, especially Santola. He's a hard act to follow. He covers a lot of the information that I talk about. But this is the general image of the building. What we try to do with these buildings that are Class A buildings is build the walls out of insulated concrete. And we do steel bar joists for the roofs that usually have a 7-pound live load built or dead load built in for solar so that they're solar ready.
Eduardo, I think, are you going to be referring to only exhibits that Mr. Santola?
No, I'm only going to work with this exhibit because all the exhibits I laid out.
Right.
And
This is your only exhibit.
well, these are two, but this is the only one I want to work with.
They're all contained in A3.
They're all contained in A3, I think, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is an A3 somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Before I
That was
forget.
that was my question.
Before I forget, for the benefit of the public, which is what I was trying to say before, is if you look closely at these exhibits, in the lower right-hand corner, there's a little camera shot that tells you where the view is to the building. And you can tell, they're very helpful to look at those. In the right-hand corner, right here, you'll see a little red dot and a camera spread which indicates where the image is. For example, this one's here, showing the corner of the building. So these buildings, again, concrete, steel bar joist, rubber membrane roofs, slope quarter-inch drain properly to meet the code. Back in the middle of the building where we have a ridge, the highest point of the building is 47 feet from the floor line. And then to meet the zone ordinance, there's a couple of extra feet. So we're saying it's 49 feet, 47 plus 2, 49 feet. On the end here, on the corners of the building, definitely on one corner, but in this case, we did it on 2 corners. Fenestration that gives the image of an office building and not a warehouse. That always works nicely for our tenants. And the other thing, this is Woodmont blue. Recognize this when you see their buildings. You'll typically see a blue band like that. And I bring that up because it's a horizontal band. And what we do when we paint these buildings, we create these horizontal paint bands. And what that psychologically is doing is reducing the overall height of the building. It's sort of bringing your mind to horizontality, and you don't feel that the building is really as tall as it is. So that always helps. That's really it. They're great buildings. Pardon me? Oh, yeah, it's ESFR sprinkler systems, which is state-of-the-art sprinklers, and they just douse a fire immediately. They just got big sprinkler heads. They kill the fire. And so hopefully you won't ever have to use that emergency access drive. That's really about it. Unless you have any questions for me. I'll be
What's
happy to
portrayed
answer.
there? Is that the office space, that corner?
That corner is one of the proposed office spaces, yeah.
How do you break the space if it's 3 tenants? How do you 2?
How do you break it?
Well, if it's 2 or 3, how do you break? the
Well,
exterior?
that's what you'll typically do is set it up with these kinds of glass facades. And in this case, we have one on one corner and one on the other corner, which gives us the opportunity to have 2 tenants. But if we don't have 2 tenants, it doesn't matter. The glass just stays there and it becomes part of the warehouse for the 1 tenant. And we board up the glass to protect it, and that's how it works.
Okay, so
What
I've got
about
the
the
office.
inside?
What I was asking was interior to the warehouse.
Yeah.
You're breaking up the building into 2 spots for 2 tenants. How do you wall that off?
Well, you build a tenant separation wall. That's, 40 plus feet high.
Is that concrete or is that?
No, you can typically do it with studs and sheetrock. Studs are like 8 or 10 inches, 1 foot on center. I don't want to get into too much more detail, or I'll be building the wall for you. But anyway, yeah, that's how we separate it.
I think I know what it is, but I'd prefer the expert explaining. On the exterior, whichever picture rendering, it looks like a little white box that's capturing, grabbing something and bringing it down the pipe. Can you just clarify for everyone what those are?
Yes, thank you. I should have talked about that. These are scuppers. These are the things that are collecting the rainwater coming off the roof. They come into these scupper boxes and then transition into a downspout, which then is piped underground to the stormwater system.
So that's how the water is contained, if you will, from the roof and not just spilling out all over.
Correct.
But rather goes into the stormwater management that we've been discussing a lot.
Right. It's all piped into the stormwater system, and we never let it spill out on the grade.
Highlight where the lighting, external lighting in the building is?
Well, you can see very, very slightly here. Here's a fixture right here mounted on the building. On the truck court side, hold on. Again, you can see this type of fixture here, right there. And they're down, they throw light down. They don't push it out in all directions. Correct.
So then there'll be no lighting above that fixture level. You won't have any uplighting or any fancy stuff to.
No,
articulate.
there's no plan for that now.
And going back to the earlier drawing, is the signage generally that type of sign? I mean, these are not prominent signs. You see it on that drawing there.
If I might, that's an observation.
Oh, okay.
That's to make sure that if you come to the board, you know, the opposite walls, that's possible. That's the part, one part, nothing to do with truck board. So if you're dropping something off, or whatever, you know, this is the board.
That would be the name of the company, whatever that is. Okay.
And these words that you see here, I think they represent about 3%, and we're allowed 5% of the wall surface. So they meet the ordinance as well.
In terms of construction, tilt slab construction?
Well, it goes back and forth depending upon what's more available. Sometimes we do tilt construction, or if tilt construction is overburdened, we do, precast. Precast is nice because you get the insulation sandwiched inside the wall. So that's a clean approach. And I think we're planning to do precast on this building. But again, if the precasters are so jammed up, et cetera, then it, reverts over to tilt up.
And will any part of the building be a rack supported structure?
I'm sorry, be what?
Will any part of the building be a rack supported structure?
No. There'll probably be rack storage in the building for whatever, typically we see rack storage.
But not a rack supported structure?
No.
Okay.
And we'll put a Knox box at the front door so you can have the key.
Each corner though. Each corner of the building.
Okay, you got it.
The roof be solid, or will it have natural lighting?
There won't be any skylights, if that's what you're referring to. No, skylights are just passe. We used to do them back in the 80s. And everybody, oh, we got to have skylights. And it turned out that they just were a failure. They leaked, they got cloudy. So we don't do them anymore.
Will there be any type of roof hatches or scuttles?
There's one roof hatch on the building with a ladder up to it, a steel ladder and cage up to it.
Okay. My concern would be with smoke evacuation from the building in case there was a fire.
Yeah.
Being able to efficiently evacuate that smoke.
I think we would probably ask for you to use whatever axe equipment you have and just chop through the roof.
How thick do you anticipate the roof being?
Pardon me?
How thick do you anticipate the roof being?
Well, the insulation is typically about 3 or 4 inches, and then it's a 1.5 inch metal deck.
Okay.
So it's only, you're only talking about 5 inches or so to get through. And there's really no code requirement that we can see that talks about smoke evacuation. Although I understand it's a good point, but we don't do smoke evacuation in the warehouse buildings.
Okay. I mean, we would definitely like there being some type of scuttle or hatch made available beyond just the single roof hatch. If you'd be agreeable to including that.
Yeah, we could put a second one in for you.
Especially with 2 tenants, just thinking through the size of the building, if there were 2 tenants.
Thank you.
Yeah, there really isn't any code rule for how many access, but we're going to do the second one.
With regard to the color schemes, are there other color schemes that in this area may fit more within the surrounding agriculture? I noticed some of your buildings have a little less gray and a little bit more brown tones to kind of blend in more. Is there any color scheme that Woodmont uses that might blend in more than the grays? I appreciate that the blue is an accent color, but just trying to blend it into the topography a little bit more.
Sort of fades with the sky, but if the picture you see here that is better or the building that developed better,
be the expert. I'm just asking from a aesthetic perspective, but
Planner?
My wife,
I just noticed some of the other buildings in other geographical
Yeah.
areas kind of look a little.
This is just, these colors are typical Woodmont colors. And we feel that they do kind of blend in with the sky in terms of being blue and gray, et cetera. They're the tones. And
We're gonna be back in 2 weeks, so we're not trying to be, we're not married.
Neither am I.
Strike, but other than that.
So homework
Do
assignment.
you have any other samples that you've had with this or?
The first page of the book, I think.
And some of them seem a little lighter than the dark gray.
Ridge Road, Ridge? Is that what you're looking at, Jessica?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that's real.
sure, well, we could do anything you want. It's just, yeah.
That's more of a beige than a gray. You don't have to decide tonight.
No, we don't. I'll defer to you, Jessica.
How about if we promise to come back with a rendering that's different colors that you can take a look at? That are softer, more earth tone.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah. It's just the lines down the parapet there seem, they're just pretty dark. So when you look at them compared to the renderings you have of the, no, I can't find it. Where you see the street view. It's kind of like a big band that you can see. So maybe if the lighter color projected out for something, it would
This
kind
one,
of disappear more.
This color at
Yeah.
the top of the building? Yeah, we can look at that.
I think that the concern would be from the view from 68 Voorhees Corner Road, where the emergency access in that corner of the office is going to be more visible than other parts of the building.
Yeah,
Um,
you're correct, but we do have it shielded pretty well with the landscaping.
Yeah. we'll get to that.
But we'll take a look at it.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
Can you speak to the mechanicals in the building?
Mechanicals, typically they're on the roof. And the only mechanical there are, what they typically use in the warehouses are, oh God, the name escapes me, but they're very efficient units. I mean, one unit handles about 50,000 square feet of warehouse, and they're sort of center in the building, so you would never see them from the street. The ones that we get a little more concerned with are the ones that are rooftop units over the office, but still, we try to set them back far enough so that they're not typically visible from the street.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
Anything else for me?
Well, public. Let me ask the folks who are here in the room, any,
Hold on, Jeff.
oh, I'm sorry, excuse me.
I just had one
Into
question
the
about
microphone.
the signage. Is it a plan? Will there be a coordinated signage plan for wall sign and any directional signs?
Wall
Thank
signs
you.
are planned.
One of the conditions of any approval is you submit the sign package to Mr. Vaccarella. He looks at it, make sure it meets the ordinance.
Thank you. Okay. So let me ask the folks in the room with us this evening, does anybody have any questions for Mr. Ruggiera's architectural testimony? Sir.
John McDonough, 403 Wedgewood Circle. Just a question on the lighting. They're all directed down, but what type of lights are they?
LED.
LED, and what color? I mean, speak of colors, but is it a bright yellow, a bluish?
Well,
color?
LED is sort of just a light white, the light bright white. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else from me?
Just go to the folks who are online. Anybody is on the live stream this evening, if you have any questions on that testimony? No. Okay, we're good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can we, it's 20 to 10, can we start into the landscaping? Because that's a pretty important topic, especially with the views that you've shown us, and thank you for responding to our earlier comments on that. Okay.
That's
Yeah.
Okay, I'm bringing back Mr. Lane, who's, I'll go out on a limb and ask that your credentials are still as they were the last time you appeared. Is that correct?
Correct.
Mr. Lane will be testifying as to landscape.
Okay. Fine tree.
Okay, as far as landscaping, we have I believe we have a generous landscaping throughout the site along 202, East Corner Road, on the parking lot and driveways. What we are proposing currently on our plan is 138 deciduous trees, which consists mostly of maples, locust, oak, and elm. We have another 34 evergreen trees, which is mostly cedar and fir. We have another 22 flowering trees, which are redbud and serviceberry. And then another 108 shrubs, which are holly, summer sweet viburnum throughout the site. We provided evergreen screening around the generator pad and also the hot box that's out along East Corner Road. And then with that, we've also preserved as many as possible the existing trees along the side property lines. And then the large buffer that we talked about along East Corner Road, where we're saving the existing trees out there.
Can you comment on this?
I believe our board secretary is going to bring up the landscaping plan in a minute so the public can see it.
You're testifying.
Why don't we start with 10, because that's with respect to Voorhees Corner. 11's with respect to the highway. I think the folks are more interested in seeing where you're landscaping along Voorhees Corner.
Yeah, as you can see, beyond the basin up to Voorhees Corner Road, we're leaving the existing vegetation that's there. It's mature trees. Beyond that, to the west, where we have the emergency access and the hot box, that's where we're adding in several trees, evergreens around, like I said, the hot box, and filling it in with some shrubs in there.
So within that area where the emergency access goes out, does the design include any kind of a man-made berm that then trees are put on top of, or is it just trees being planted in the graded area with no fill?
Yeah, it's pretty much just in the graded area. That emergency access has a little bit of a high point in it. So, I mean, it does berm up a little bit, but it's not, we haven't constructed, because with that emergency access, you don't want it to be too steep if an emergency vehicle has to get in there.
I guess my question is there the ability to add some elevation through some mounding of natural earth, create a berm to try and cut the height off and the visibility from that area?
Yeah, I mean, we can add some fill in there. Definitely, we need to keep the hot box flat, and then, like I said, the emergency access, we don't want to build too much, but just to the east of that, before we get to the woods, we could build that up a little bit there.
Our landscape architect can add some more nuance to it. But that was just my one concern in looking at that area and looking at the landscaping and looking at the elevation of the road and the houses across the street, that, you know, this is the one area where, from a residential perspective, there's a significant amount of visibility.
John, have you given any consideration to the
Yeah,
the Brown
let's,
comment?
and John, you submitted a report dated May 7th, 2024, correct? And you-
Correct.
So we probably want to go over that as well.
Okay, well, let me talk a little bit about the screening along Voorhees Corner Road. And I guess I'd first like to talk about just.
By the way, members of the public, this distinguished tall gentleman here is John Morgan Thomas, a landscape expert retained by the township to review these plans and give his input on screening and buffering and berms and things like that.
So I think along most of the length of Voorhees Corner Road, that's where the existing forest has been maintained, and the existing forest consists of, it's actually probably 70 or 80% evergreen. At minimum depth, there's about 100 feet being retained. So this is probably as much as we ever see in terms of a landscape buffer, planted or existing. So I think overall, it's a very effective buffer to Voorhees Corner and the residents across the street, with the exception of, I guess that would be the northwest corner of the property that we're just talking about now. And my thought on that is that I'm not sure. I think the best thing that could happen here is that the planting that occurs in the open area on that corner of the site basically mimic the dense evergreen buffer that exists along the rest of Voorhees Corner of the road, along Voorhees Corner Road. The one little complication here in that corner of the site, of course, is that there's a JCP&L power line easement where we can't plant anything, and that exists on a couple of other places, but this is kind of a critical location. But one thought I had, and I spoke about this briefly with Mr. Troutman, is that perhaps there'd be an opportunity to change the alignment of that emergency access road so that the emergency access road came off the parking lot and was actually located primarily within that power line right of way. That it would curl down to the road, but in the opposite, be flipped over the design that you're seeing on the plan, so that we could extend the dense planting from the edge of the existing forest all the way out to the edge of the power line right of way. And that would put a planting between the building and that residence that's closest to the corner of the property. And I maybe it would be better if I just pointed this out on the plan if I could.
There is a visual representation of that look.
There's a visual representation, but I can almost put this in.
We couldn't.
Right now, the access drive, if you were to follow a line down on the western portion of the building, the road, the emergency access drive is a line, and it essentially hooks out straight to Voorhees Corner Road. I'm suggesting if we take it the other way and hook it in from the opposite underneath the power line, then we can take that whole area, that whole corner, and provide that as a dense planting buffering, just close off that corner to view from Voorhees Corner Road. And first we'll have to, work out the geometry and the emergency access and so forth. But that to me would eliminate trying to plant on either side of that little emergency access drive. And I think that's a possible solution. And then beyond that, we can't plant in the JCP&L right of way. There will be some opening on that corner that we can't deal with. The other part of it is if we can have a little flexibility on the location of that placement of that hot box, which takes up a fair amount of real estate. If we have that positioned more carefully, because that's taking up kind of valuable space that we could plant some evergreens and create a more complete screen. But I think the idea, to me, that idea of that planting should be more like what we would call in the ordinance screen planting buffer, where not that it has to be a double row of evergreens, but it should have a considerable evergreen component in addition to some larger trees, so that really that corner of the building, as much as possible, it's a big building, that corner of the building goes away from view from Voorhees Corner Road, because really the front of this building is the entrance on 202.
So, yes, we are in favor of all of that. The only thing we'd have to clear is to make sure that if the access easement, the emergency access is going to be okay with JCP&L. We think it probably will be. We're not that far along with our utility placement, so we can probably slide the hot box in one direction or another. So I would add, I know Mr. Lane is known to your landscape architect, so they could get together on the phone. We have no objection. And we know in the redevelopment plan, it calls for heavy buffering here. So we're not in any way trying to, avoid that obligation.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So why don't we, Mr. Lane, why don't you walk through the Mr. John Morgan Thomas's report from the 7th? And thank you, John. Very thoughtful.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That's great.
Yeah, I think number one talks about adding, there's 2 specimen and historic trees are being removed, and that what we have to get back is the 54 inches in like kind. Am I correct?
Yeah, I can, the first 3 comments just have to do with tree removal, tree protection, and tree replacement. And the only, I guess, the question in the first part of the tree removal, I just want to confirm what the engineer did on this particular instance is, rather than locating every single tree in that whole wooded area, which was not necessarily a productive exercise, they took some samplings to come up with the overall quantity of trees and to characterize the trees. And I'm perfectly okay with that approach. We've done that on other projects. The only thing I wanted to confirm here was, so they did a tree sampling of the wooded area on the one side of the site, and there were individual trees identified on the other portion of the property that identified, I think, another 59 additional trees. I just wanted to make sure that what the methodology was to determine if there were any additional specimen or historic trees in the wooded area that you didn't sample. So that was the question. Okay. And I suspect there are not, but that should be confirmed on the plans by whoever did your survey work. Because right now we just don't know if there are any other specimen and historic trees that were, say, being removed for the construction of the large detention basin outside of the areas that were sampled.
Okay.
So that was that. I think that's really the only question in that particular, in number 1.
And whatever we need to get back, we're more than happy to add to the plan.
And I guess in number 3, just for the board's benefit, the applicant, and this kind of it pains me a little bit to to tell you that you don't need to provide us with 4,000 replacement trees. The ordinance basically requires only replacements for specimen and historic trees, and that's why there's the 64 inches. The other trees that were sampled, that was to determine that basically what they were doing is supplying us information that said that that area where they're clearing does not meet the township's definition of a woodland. So the 55% removal calculation does not apply to this project. And I'm in agreement with that. But there is no specific requirement for replacement of the trees that was noted on the plan. So I'd really like a nice planting in that buffer area next to the corner. So it basically, the required replacement is 18 3-inch caliper trees, and we'd like you to locate those on the plan. And they're in addition to the required trees on the plan.
Will do.
The note number 5 with buffers is actually just what I already talked about. So I think that's sufficient. We did have one other area that in my interpretation of the ordinance, we do have a residential property to the north on Voorhees Corner Road, which would technically require a buffer. It's not residentially zoned, but it is a residential use. However, there's a JCP&L right-of-way that would preclude a screen planting. So I have a suggestion here that we provide some additional planting at the edge of the parking lot to provide some screening. And really all you're going to be able to do is provide some large shrubs in that area. Some of the trees that are proposed there, JCP won't allow. They're within the right of way. So there are about 5 trees that need to be removed, and I'd like to see those replaced with some large shrubs, small flowering trees, something that'll meet JCP&L's requirement. Number 6 is cell phone tower planting. There are evergreens that are proposed to be removed along Route 202 near the cell phone tower, and those are part of the, if I recall correctly, those are part of the approval for the cell phone tower planting. There are 14 evergreens that are being removed, and my suggestion is, since they're not too big, they're very nice evergreens, I think we can transplant them in an area directly in front of the cell phone tower. There's an open area that will provide some screening from the highway, which was the original intent. So I think but those were part of those were a conditional part of the approval for the cell phone tower. I think item number 7 are just a variety of plan notes and landscape requirements, and I assume you could comply with all of those. And the last comment, number 8, had to do with stormwater management, really asking for some more details, and I'm sure we can, Mr. Lane, if you can confirm that we can kind of work through those. We need some additional details on those aquaponic treatment devices in terms of the actual planting, and there's some details that have to do with the plantings of the basin and between your office and Mr. Darcy. I hope we can work through those. Okay.
One issue that comes up is in the establishment during the establishment period of the fire retention in the wetlands basins. Sometimes we've asked applicants in the past to provide a temporary water source so that you can keep the plants alive.
I didn't include that in this report, and it was an oversight. I would request it in this case, just because if we can provide a frost-proof hydrant, since it's isolated from the building and there's no easy way to get water to it, I think it's always a good idea. There's a big investment in plants that go in these basins because they're literally thousands of them, and expensive seed mixes and so forth. I think it's a pretty worthwhile investment. But that's a good point. And then some of my questions about the detailing of the basins also had to do with establishment of the plant material in the basins. I like the bioretention basins, certainly. I think they're a much better approach than the sand pits. And I think the more we read about them, I think the more they're finding that as the plant material becomes established, they're basically outperforming what they expected them to be. So I'm just concerned about seeing plants thrive.
Okay. Any other questions?
Are they complying with all that or?
Yes.
Okay.
When do you think you'll have plans ready for review for the relocated emergency access? No, for the relocated access driveway? Perfect, thank you.
Emergency access, I'm not sure, but I think.
Okay. So there being no more questions from the board, anybody from the public who is here who would have some questions for Mr. Lane's?
Or even if you want to ask Mr. Morgan Thomas about the landscaping, you could ask him questions as well, because he testified at length.
Marianne Matheson, Bighorn Road in Flemington.
Still need you to speak up.
Sure, it's Marianne Matheson, Mathiessen, Bighorn Road in Flemington. I live on a property that is directly east. And the question that I have is, the way we're situated looks like Bronx is like 111 homes, so 400 residents. The way the wind comes out of the west, kind of situated up the top of the land. So my question is,
Are you able just to speak directly
for
into the
the noise
microphone?
buffer, if there's air conditioning units for generators, you've addressed kind of Voorhees Corner Road and 202, but we're over by the Case Boulevard side. Will there be any type of landscaping around? I don't even know where the air conditioning units would be or the generators would be as far as sound buffers with that. Because we hear it from JPK school.
Oh.
So, and, you know, we're a little bit concerned with the lighting and the noise, especially if there's trucks coming in, it'll be facing that development.
The right-hand side.
Can you indicate, ma'am, where your house is?
Which side?
Just for the record, you're indicating that I don't want to say whether that's west, but you're in the neighborhood in front of the middle school.
Not as far as you think. We hear the highway. Were you joking about the 4,000 trees that?
No,
There's 4,000 trees coming out?
no.
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 That's why I shouldn't joke.
Over the last several years, our neighborhood.
Before you even answer that, can somebody just have a microphone?
All right, Taylor.
Don't worry about it.
The existing trees along that property line to the north, that's remaining. there's a big gap in here because you have the high tension line easement. So there's not going to be able to be any trees even planted on our property because of that. Then you have this dedication, which is going to keep that plantings in there. So again, we're pretty far away, but where there's a gap, we're not going to be able to plant anything because that's the JCP. They'll never allow trees underneath the high tension wires. No, there's a little bit down here for the detention basin, but basically this buffer stand and then this up here is remaining. And then, like I said, in here, there's nothing in here and that's going to stay. Like I said, we can't really do anything about that. No, yes.
Sorry.
No. Yeah, and you could see, you could kind of see here where for the US bronze has been pretty cleared. So there's not trees that are being taken out here, just a little bit where the basin is. Yep. Yeah.
The other thing is that where
Okay. Anybody on the live stream have any questions for Mr. Lane and the testimony on the landscape? No. Okay. All right, so we're after 10. So the plan is in 2 weeks?
Plan is, I think, is to carry with no further notice to the public to May 22nd at 7 PM right here at Town Hall.
Yes.
I'm sure Mr. Velardo will do the public.
Yeah, you have your traffic.
Yeah, so we would be, we'll come back with some of the cleanup that we have from tonight, but the primary witness will be traffic.
So folks, their primary witness at the next meeting, which is May 22nd is going to be traffic. And they're going to talk about truck turning and trips and all that stuff. And by the way, there's a traffic report on file with our board secretary. So if you all want to come in and look at the traffic report, and there's also a review letter from our esteemed traffic expert who graduated from Lehigh University. And if you want to look at that report as well, you can look at that. So, and any documents you want to look at, they're on file. So you can come down here and look at them during normal business hours.
So I'm sure everybody has already looked at the file. I've been able to add it to the website, so I will add it to the Google Drive, so you will be able to view it. It might be a large file, so you might have to actually download it, but you should be able to view it. But you're still free to come down to the office, though.
Some people like to look at it in person.
Just bring the microphone.
Yeah. Although I'm not answering any questions, so.
I thought this changed.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We're adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.